Public Safety Committee of Council come to order. Madam Clerk, I know we do not have a quorum at this time because there's some other gatherings going on that some members are at, so we don't need a quorum to start with Dr. Anderson, so we're going to bring her to the table and her team for an update on police oversight. So at this time, Dr. Anderson, will you please come to the table? Welcome, and we're glad to have you here. Would you introduce your team?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm Dr. Lee Anderson, Executive Director of the Police Accountability Team, and I will have my team introduce themselves.
Pull it up close. Hit the button and pull it up real close till the green goes on. There we go.
Good morning. Thank you. Martin Bila. I'm an Assistant Director of Law in the Law Department, and I work with the Police Accountability Team. Good morning.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Hannah Macias. I'm a performance auditor on the Police Accountability Team.
Okay. Before I call upon Dr. Anderson, to the viewing public, everyone should know the passion that the body has with regard to police oversight. And so our position has always been about transparency, accountability, professional conduct within the Division of Police. So not only are we starting with Dr. Anderson today, but I believe on May 20th, please correct me if I'm wrong, there will be a special meeting because we have to work around their schedule in the afternoon. I believe it's 1 o'clock on May 20th, and staff will confirm that before the meeting is over, where the federal monitor will be in here to give us an update as well, because our position has been, again, we want to know where there has been improvements, where there has been successes within the Division of Police, and where there's still work that has to be undertaken and achieved. So we are in full compliance with the DOJ, and again, with regard to the federal monitor. So Dr. Anderson, the floor is yours. Please proceed.
Thank you so much. Again, a pleasure to be here. I just wanted to, before we start, say that I just actually had a call with the federal monitor, and so we are, there's a lot of synergy that is happening around this topic, and I am excited about the progress that is being made, the challenges that we might encounter, and how we will overcome those together. At this time, I will turn it over to Martin Bilat, who will start our presentation.
Okay.
We have a healthy, I'll call it healthy, presentation to give because we think that it's worth that for the body as well as the viewing public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Proceed. Just pull it up. Just pull it up close to you and then hit the button because you're going to have to speak right into because they're not going to hear you. Okay, pull it up closer. You're going to pull it up close. There you go.
Can you hear me now? Test, test.
Can you? Okay. Okay,
Sounds
go ahead.
good. Okay. Good morning, everybody.
Good
Again, Martin Bilat, Police Accountability Team. As Dr. Anderson mentioned, we have a lot to update you on. I think since the last time we were here with City Council, a lot has happened and we've made a lot of progress. So we're really, really excited to kind of go through some of that progress with you. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to stop, ask as you need. But there is going to be a lot of information coming at you, so we do apologize.
Go ahead.
Sorry, apologies, the clicker doesn't seem to be.
That's all right.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. So a little bit of an overview of the presentation we're giving today. We're going to give you a Section 1 departmental overview so you can understand who we are, what we do. In Section 2, we'll be covering a lot of our divisional and sectional responsibilities and priorities. So we'll be going through some of the compliance assessments that have been completed, giving you an update on those, and then also briefing you on our 2026 and 2027 priorities. And then in section 3, we have our current initiative. This is the real fun stuff. We're going to be going through a lot of the community engagements that we've been working on, youth engagements, our continuous compliance efforts, and then updating the council on our partnerships that we are really excited about. So this is us, visually and organizationally structured. This is the police accountability team. As we are introduced, we have Dr. Lee Anderson, who's the executive director. There's me, Martin Belat, an assistant director of law with the law department, but also on the police accountability team. And then we have Hannah Macias, who's a performance auditor. We had 2 positions. We recently had another assistant director of law position that's currently vacant, and we also have a project manager position that's currently vacant. But it's a team of 3, mighty 3 right now, but we get a lot done. A little bit of our overview of our departmental purpose. Our objective is to promote justice and integrity in law enforcement by diligently implementing the consent decree's terms. That's mainly what we're focused on. When you think about police accountability team, we're first and foremost looking at the consent decree. How do we become more compliant with the consent decree? And for areas where we are compliant, where we think we're under represented in our compliance score, we do advocate for that recognition. Here's a little bit about what our objectives are. We facilitate assessments and analyses. We coordinate and / execute assessments, policies, practices, training programs. We complete performance audits. So if there's anything that we think needs to be assessed or looked at further in detail in this space, we take it on ourselves to do performance audits. We compare and create executive comparative analyses. So we'll look at a couple of processes, whether it be here or in peer cities, and say, how should we be doing things the way, are we doing them the best way they can, or should we be doing them a different way? We support continuous compliance efforts. So if there are terms in the consent decree that are not being met, we'll meet with internal stakeholders and we'll say, hey, maybe we should do this, or maybe we should do that, or what kind of programs can we start, or projects can we start to bring these projects into compliance. And then as I mentioned earlier, if we believe that there are compliance measures that we are meeting that aren't being recognized by the monitoring team, DOJ, or the court, we'll advocate for those upgrades or that recognition. So who is who? We know that there's a lot of players in this space. We recently added this slide so that way you can kind of see the differentiation between who the police accountability team is versus the monitoring team, the district court judge, and the Department of Justice. So we'll start with the police accountability team. Who is us? We're the team that represents the city of Cleveland. We help implement consent decree reforms, and we track data and patterns. So when we go into court, as you're seeing here displayed in this image, we're the team that's speaking on behalf of the city, talking about how we're doing with our compliance with the consent decree. Other members that are in this space for terms that are commonly used, we have the monitoring team. This is the team that, as you mentioned earlier, Chair, is the team that's appointed by the judge, and they come in and independently assess whether our compliance with the consent decree is happening on the ground. So they'll take a look, they'll look at the evidence, they'll hear our arguments, they'll hear arguments from the DOJ, they'll meet with us, talk to us, and they will determine how well independently we are doing. And then on the other side of the courtroom, we have the Department of Justice. This is the federal entity that initially investigated us back in 2014 and represents the interests of the United States as the plaintiff in the case. So a lot of what they do is, at the same time as reviewing policies as the monitoring team, they'll give feedback, they'll look for holes in assessments, they'll, on their own, come to some conclusions. And then, of course, we have the U.S. District Court judge. We go and present to the court once every 6 months in person as part of a semi-annual update. And then also occasionally the judge will call us in for like monthly status conferences on certain topics. We've been going more frequently than less actually in the past year, which has been great engagement. And we have Judge Solomon Oliver in the U.S. District Court for the Northern Court. And this is the updates on our compliance progress.
All right. So again, my name is Hannah Macias. I'm a performance auditor with the Police Accountability Team. And I'm going to be giving some updates about the recent semi-annual report we got from the monitoring team, as well as the recent assessments that have been filed by the monitoring team in court. So we just received earlier this year the 18th semi-annual report by the monitoring team. This is a report that they complete every 6 months. So this last report covered July through December of 2025. In this report, we received 29 upgrades and 3 downgrades. I'll go through the paragraphs really quickly, just of what paragraphs were upgraded and downgraded. We received upgrades in community engagement, paragraphs 16, 17, 18, and 19. Community and problem-oriented policing, otherwise known as CPOP, that was paragraph 30. Use of force, paragraph 119. Accountability, paragraph 180 and 181. That's related to the internal affairs section. Paragraphs 198, 201, 203, 210, 223, and 239. That's related to OPS and CPRB. In the transparency and oversight section, we received upgrades to paragraphs 250 and 252. That's related to the Inspector General, as well as upgrades to 257, 258, 261, and 268, and that's related to our data collection requirements. In the officer assistance and support section, we received an upgrade to paragraph 310, which is related to recruitment and hiring, as well as 313 and 314, and that's related to performance evaluations. And finally, in supervision, we received upgrades to 322 and 323, which are general requirements of first-line supervisors, as well as 337 and 338, which is specifically related to body cam. For our downgrades, we received 3 downgrades. That's paragraph 253 and 254, related to the Inspector General, and 328 related to the Officer Intervention Program. I also want to highlight, so these were upgrades that were specific to the reporting period, July through December of 2025. In this report as well, the monitoring team provided an update on the compliance levels for all of the assessments, the 7 assessments they completed in 2025. So just to highlight the overall upgrades that we received in the assessments, we received 144 upgrades in those 7 assessments and 4 downgrades, which brings us to a net of 140 upgrades through those assessments. So with the assessment upgrades and then the upgrades related to this specific semi-annual, there was 173 total upgrades, 7 downgrades, which brings us to a net of 166 net upgrades. You can go next slide. So I'm going to go over to the assessments in a little bit more detail. Just a general overview of how the assessment of consent decree progress works. There's about 3 specific stages. First, it starts with creating and reforming policies. Then it goes to training and implementation. And then finally, audits and assessments of compliance. So that's the stage that we're at now. Just to highlight the importance of the assessments, this provides an objective and comprehensive evaluation of whether the terms of the requirements outlined in a consent decree are being fully implemented. So we have the 18th semi-annual, all the semi-annuals, they are more of an informal assessment of compliance, whereas these comprehensive assessments go in depth paragraph by paragraph, making sure that all the requirements outlined in those paragraphs are being met, and where they're not, what work the city still needs to do. And then this is just a paragraph that outlines the compliance assessments, paragraph 360C. Compliance requires that the city and CDP have incorporated the requirements into policy, have trained on the all relevant personnel as necessary to fulfill their responsibilities, and that the requirements are being carried out in practice. So as it comes to the police accountability team, our focus when it comes to assessments is we are involved in every step of this. We receive methodologies from the monitoring team, so we review those to make sure that we are aligned on identifying and evaluating every paragraph in each section. We facilitate data transfers to the monitoring team, so anything that they need to complete their assessment, we ensure that the monitoring team has access to. We also conduct preliminary audits to ensure that we are aware of the content that the monitoring team is reviewing. We continuously have conversations with monitoring team and DOJ to ensure that there aren't any issues with the assessment, and if there are any issues that arise, whether it is data availability, timeliness, what have you, we're working together to make sure that the assessments are completed. And as always, we're always advocating for upgrades where we believe there is evidence for those upgrades. So to get into it, we have, again, 7 assessments. First, we're going to start with crisis intervention. This assessment was filed in federal court on September 26 in 2025. We received 24 upgrades. This assessment reviewed roughly 111 2023 mental or behavioral health crisis cases in CDP. And then we just called out a few quotes from the monitoring team in this assessment. As a monitoring team had observed in their assessment, CDP received or achieved general and substantial effective compliance across all of the CIT-related paragraphs of the consent decree. The general and substantial and effective compliance are the highest compliance levels that we can achieve on the scale that we have here in Cleveland. Additionally, the monitoring team determined that CDP has successfully established a robust crisis intervention program that meets or exceeds the requirements established in the consent decree. And very importantly for us, the monitoring team was able to note that there was extremely low rates of arrests for individuals who are having a mental health crisis, as well as very low rates of use of force with individuals who are experiencing a mental health crisis. And there's been an increase in rates of hospital transport for those who are experiencing crisis rather than arresting and sending these individuals to jail. Moving on to recruitment and hiring. This assessment was filed in December 11th, 2025. We received 9 upgrades in this area. The monitoring team reviewed 187 background files from CDP Academy classes 157 and 159. The monitoring team completed a systematic review of the recruitment plans, recruitment reports, job announcements, policies, procedures, and guiding documentation for how CDP conducts their recruitment and hiring, and they found that that CDP has met or exceeded all of the requirements for this section of the consent decree. Specifically, they found that more than 2/3 of the total applicants received in 2024 came from individuals who self-identified as multiracial or belong to racial minority groups, and nearly 25% of all applicants were women. And then additionally, all background investigation for candidates in reviewed sample were found to be timely and included criminal history, employment history, and use of controlled substance assessments. Next, we have equipment and resources. This assessment was filed in December on 2024. Or December 24th, 2025. We received 6 upgrades in this section. The monitoring team assessed the state adequacy and readiness of the equipment, processes, systems, and employee assistant resources during September through October of 2025. We did have monitoring team members come on site to actively assess this along with documentation that the division had. The monitoring team was able to conclude that CDP had an adequate inventory of safe and operable zone cars with maintenance issues that were consistent with the age of the fleet. Additionally, they were able to determine that CDP maintained an adequate number of computers, functional and safe, though aging fleet, and properly equipped zone cars with 93% in-service rate and no indication of major systemic neglect. As well as the individuals who are employed by CDP in information technology, like our analysts and again, IT professionals, demonstrated educational experience and certifications that appear to be above the baseline minimal requirements that allows for a modern data-driven capacity to drive operational decision-making for the division. Next, we have a training assessment. This assessment was filed in court on December 30th, 2025. We received 19 upgrades. The monitoring team reviewed annual training plans. These are 3-year training plans, so they reviewed the 2023 through 2025, as well as 2024 to 2026 training plans, Recruit Academy training, our field training program, in-service training, and additional training documentation during the time frame. The time frame of this assessment was June 2023 through June 2025. The monitoring team, this was the first monitoring team, the first comprehensive assessment the monitoring team completed in a training subsection. The monitoring team was able to determine that CDP had substantially complied with the consent decree's training requirements. Additionally, CDP Recruit Academy instructs a total of 1,093 instruction hours. And then for in-service training, consistently, CDP required 72 hours in 2023, 35 hours in 2024, and as this assessment was only through half of June June, through half of 2025 through June of 2025, CDP was projected to complete 59 hours of in-service training. We have a staffing assessment highlights. This was, the staffing assessment was filed in December 10th, 2025. There's only 3 paragraphs in this section. All the paragraphs received an upgrade to substantial and effective compliance. The monitoring team reviewed CDP's compliance with this section, reviewed the staffing assessment that was completed in relation to the officer assistance and support section. The monitoring team was able to conclude that we achieved a substantial and effective compliance for all 3 of the paragraphs here. The review of the staffing plan completed does show that CDP addressed and provided responses to personnel deployment for CPOP initiatives. They had sufficient staffing for misconduct investigation, unity of command, and a sufficient number of supervisors. And then for these next 2 assessments, I'm going to hand it back over to Martin.
Thanks, Hannah. Update on the search and seizure assessment. That was filed on December 5th, 2025. We received 8 upgrades, which is awesome. Reviewed 2024 and 2023 cases of stop, search, and arrest. The vast majority of stop reviewed were supported by sufficient articulation or reasonable suspicion, so 95.24% of those cases, and probable cause in 90.8% of those cases. There was an absence of rote or canned language in 94% of the cases. So an explanation of what that is, like say you're filling out a stop, search, or arrest report, you don't want to see officers that are using the same language over and over again. That's not proper articulation of what reasonable suspicion or probable cause or how it should be articulated. And then we also saw that the city hired Sigma Squared on this topic in 2025 to analyze disparities in 2024 search and seizure data to determine whether there is a division-wide officer bias. So something that the monitoring team highlighted in their assessment when looking at our data, they saw some raw disparities when it came to the stops during that time period. So the city decided to bring on an independent party to review that data to determine whether those stops showed or displayed and provided evidence of division-wide officer process bias, and that contractor brought on determined that there was no division-wide officer process bias in the 2024 stop and search data. And we'll go more into that in another slide. Use of force assessment highlights. This was a massive, massive assessment. This was filed on February 4th, 2026. 75 upgrades and 4 downgrades. This covered paragraphs 45 through 130. In this assessment, the monitoring team assessed approximately 272 level 1 and level 2 use of force incidents that spanned 2023 and 2024. Additionally, they reviewed approximately 47 level 3 uses of force cases that were investigations that were done by the FIT investigation team, so the force investigation team. And those cases occurred in 2023 and 2024. A little bit of a description about the differences in level between use of force. Level 1 use of force is your lowest level. That'll usually be like anything from like, as low as pistol points all the way up to level 3, which is the highest level when you're using serious uses of force, possible deadly force, things around that nature. And in this assessment, the monitor found that 97% of CDP's level 1 and level 2 uses of force were constitutional. The remaining cases were appropriately addressed and handled within the division. Quote from this assessment says, when it comes to interacting with the public, the reviewers found that officers are generally following policies, supervisors are engaged, and when policy violations occur, there is internal identification of those issues, and the systems designed to address those violations are in place and working. The monitor on the FIT side also found that the FIT's 2023 and 2024 investigations to be in general compliance with the consent decree's requirements that are outlined in paragraph 118. I'll cover our 2026 and 2027 priorities. So that was an update on the assessments that are complete. We'll go now into what we're focusing on in 2026 and 2027. Again, this was a description of the progress for the assessments that occurred in 2025. We had those that we just detailed for you: use of force, search and seizure, crisis intervention, recruitment and hiring, equipment and resources, training and staffing. And in 2026, we're focusing on a whole bunch more assessments. We're working with the monitoring team and the DOJ to complete methodologies and provide data for the following assessments in 2026: CPC, DPC, CPOP, Bias Free, Internal Affairs, OPS, Discipline, Inspector General, Data and Transparency, Training, again in 2026, Recruitment and Hiring 2026, Equipment and Resources in 2026, Performance and Promotions, Supervision, and Policies. So we have a lot of our plate. And in addition to some of the items that were not rated in substantial compliance or general compliance in the previous assessments, that's why the monitoring team is coming back in 2026 and determining whether there should be another look to see if there was even further progress made on top of the progress that was noted in the 2025 assessments on those areas. Dr. Anderson?
Thank you, Martin and Hannah. So I will start with some current initiatives that we have been working through. We understand that the assessments are the assessments. They are numbers, right? And so we want to make sure that we are moving forward to make sure that the change is felt, the community feels the change, the division feels the change, and other stakeholders that are invested in the process understand how we are moving forward to get into compliance with the consent decree. So one of the things that I wanted to mention is that the police accountability team presents to each of the academy classes before they graduate. We are the second to last class, talking to them about the consent decree, reminding them about constitutional policing, and going through making sure how they can help with that, right? So what is that? We tell them, you want to embrace your training and instruction. We go through them and say, please follow the policies outlined in the general police orders and divisional notices. We encourage them to thoroughly complete all forms and promptly remedy any errors in reporting so that we can make sure we have valid and reliable data to be able to assess that data for the monitoring team as well as ourselves. We ask them to make sure that they support community and problem-oriented policing, crisis intervention, and other consent decree related developments. And we ask them to definitely remain positive and always ask questions. We want them to feel comfortable in this space. This is a new era of policing, and we are looking forward to moving the division through that space. Next, I want to talk about some of the events that have taken place that we have participated in that have lifted up either the division or just the city overall. So Pat, the police accountability team with Carol from Ballard, from the Adams Board, we were invited and attended the 25th anniversary celebration for Ohio CIT. We went with a proclamation. We were the only jurisdiction in the town, in the entire state, that sent a proclamation in honor of our CIT progress. And so the proclamation was featured and it was displayed alongside the governor's proclamation, highlighting state and local commitment to crisis intervention. The recognition also reflected the ongoing partnership between state leadership and Cleveland CIT community and advancing mental health response. And the celebration highlighted 25 years of CIT's impact on improving outcomes for individuals experiencing mental health crises, through training, collaboration, and community-based response models. So compliance with paragraph 26 of the consent decree, I want to note that we use this as the annual district policing committee presentations. This was held April 7th of 2026 at the Dunham Tavern. And paragraph 26 says that at least annually, the district policing committee will present its identified strategies and concerns and recommendations to the commission, that is the police commission. At that time, an officer who is a member of the district policing committee will present to the commission CDP's assessment of ways to address and to barriers, implementing concerns and recommendations of the committee. And so that took place. So we saw that each of the district DPCs as well as the community members that are a part of the DPCs presented to the police commission, and part of that is the presentations focused on strategies, concerns, recommendations regarding community policing to the chief of police. The deputy chief of police was in attendance as well, and ensures that community input is integrated into police operations. So we fulfilled that paragraph as well. All right, so we have engaged in lots of community engagements. Myself, the police chief, other members of the division, the PAT team, we're getting out there because we want to build trust, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, about how we're doing that. All right, one of the things that we held, because we consistently hear from the monitoring team very accurately that youth are not involved as they should be. So we held an event with the organization Jack and Jill titled Community Policing and You, and we had a number of youth come, and we partnered with the mayor's office for a successful teen civic dialogue hosted by the Cleveland chapter of Jack and Jill of America. And it's a national organization dedicated to youth development, leadership, civic engagement, and empowering African American teens and families. And so the purpose of the event was to successfully engage Cleveland teens in direct conversation with the mayor and the PAT team and the leadership on policing, trust, accountability, and how we hear their youth voice. It elevated their perspectives as a meaningful contribution to ongoing public safety and reforms. And here are some of those photos from that event. It was very well attended, and the youth were extremely engaged, as well as CDP. So we are definitely, I feel, making headway in these spaces. Additionally, we presented to the Junior Mayors Association for Public Safety Day. We partnered with the Junior Mayors Association, a civic leadership program introducing students to local government and civic participation. So we participated in the 3rd District, which was a hands-on engagement with not only police accountability, but police operations and community policing. We facilitated station rotations, and we focused on transparency, oversight, and the role of community voice. We led interactive discussions and scenario-based learning on decision-making and accountability in policing with the teens, and we reinforced youth civic engagement and the importance of student perspectives in public safety and reform conversations. So we were very glad to have students from the Gann Academy, just across the board, that were actually very instrumental in making sure that we heard their voices. Next, we have Sigma Squared. So we got a report, as Martin mentioned, one of our assessments was search and seizure. And one of the things that the monitor told us was that we had these raw disparities in the numbers, which we knew about. We had found those numbers or that evidence in 2024. And so what we wanted to do was make sure that we looked for experts that can help us move through the process to see if there were any biases in our processes. With that noted, we ended up working with Dr. Roland Fryer, an economist from Harvard University. And one of the things that I think is important to note is that we also worked with TV20 to put out the information for the community. So the report found that there were these raw disparities, and the question remained, are there biases? So we went forth and found a third party to help us, and the city released an independent analysis of 2024 CDP stop and search data conducted by Sigma Squared, and the study examined whether racial disparities reflected process bias in policing decisions. Well, their analysis found that no evidence of process bias exists after controlling for key factors such as stop, context, location, and reason. And we went to TV20 with Dr. Debbie, who also works with Dr. Fryer, and they were able to explained a lot of this to the community. Although raw disparities were present and post-search outcomes, including contraband recovery and arrest, were similar across the groups, findings support continued use of data-driven approaches to evaluate policing practices and transparency. And what we also found is that lots of oversight experts from around the country were interested in the report, and they were also interested in the fact that the city stepped up and took responsibility for the disparities that existed and went forth, and because transparency matters and understanding how we're going to get this forward with legitimacy and trust in the community. So we also have a partnership with Benchmark Analytics, and I'm going to go through, this is a sample of the dashboard that we have for CDP, and I also want to note that we also have the system for Sigma Squared, so the software. So it was not just one report, but now the police chief can run the numbers consistently and see if there's bias that pops up and what needs to be done about it. In effect, Benchmark Analytics is an early warning intervention system designed to advance officer career paths and department goals, okay? And so it aggregates all officer performance data and it analyzes it for early preventive intervention and provides customized officer support with specific case action plans. So it's not a punitive system. What it does is, if an officer is using more force, it sort of tries to triangulate whether or not the officer is using force because they have some outside issues going on, or whether they are in a situation where they feel like they have to use more force. So they compare that to other officers that are using force. If an officer arises, right, or rises up to the top for using excessive force, or maybe they're having poor performance, that rises up through the chain of command through this system so that they're able to reflect it, we're able to talk to them about it, and they're able to see what can be done. Do they need to pull the officer off the street, get them some training, get them some counseling? What is it that's going on? Are they using more force, such as, because other officers are not doing anything? Or is it the other way around, right? And so this system helps us clear up a lot of that noise and nuances. So we're very excited about this process.
So on that point, so for each officer, there's a document, a report?
To the chair, yes. It will be a dashboard that they can go into.
And that would follow them, their personnel record, their
the
personnel
chair.
file?
Yes.
Okay. What is the cost for this?
I apologize to the chair. I don't know what the actual cost is. We can get that number, but it was approved through City Council with IT.
Right.
But I will get you the exact
Right.
numbers.
Right.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah, if you could provide us, because, we've been having this issue with the administration going through IT, going through technology, contracts which have not been coming back to council.
Yes.
They have been going due to section 181.102 of the codified ordinances. They have not been coming back to council on this. So
I
I
will-
want to make sure that there is communications with us as it pertains to cost of contracts, and if a contract is being extended, because up to this point, you're just going through Board of Control, you're not coming back to council. So I want to make sure that there's communications with us. So you'll get us that figure, okay?
Understood.
Keep going,
Yes.
keep going.
Thank you. And so next we have technical assistance with Justin Hughes. And we applied through the Department of Justice to the Community-Oriented Policing Services Office. And the purpose is to provide no-cost technical assistance to strengthen community policing and improve collaboration with all our oversight partners. And so we started with CPOP, right? And so when we originally applied, we got Justin Hughes came in and they helped us with the community and primary-oriented policing, which ended up standardizing tracking of community policing activities. It reduced the reporting burden while improving consistency. We were able to strengthen data analysis to measure the impact and identify needs. And we supported the rollout and training of a new framework for CPOP. Now, the external partnerships that we will project that they will be working on, they will clarify roles across all of the oversight bodies in the city of Cleveland. So the police accountability team, understood and realized that there may be some confusion about who has jurisdiction, who has responsibility, and we want to make sure that that's cleared up because we want not just the most oversight, but the most effective oversight here in the city of Cleveland. And so with that said, they're going to develop process maps and identify gaps. They're going to use the RACI matrix, which I'll go through in a little bit, to define responsibilities, and they're going to give us recommendations on how to improve communication, timeliness, and also transparency and working together. And I want to highlight that to provide some more clarity, the work is part of a technical assistance award received by the city through the Department of Justice, and it is through the Collaborative Reform Initiative at no cost to the city. This is an expansion of TA at the city that was previously awarded for CPOP, and this has helped us to better understand the accountability partners and develop recommendations to streamline communication again. And I want to just highlight and lift up the partners that we have. So Sydney Roberts is working with us. She's a subject matter expert, proven leader in police accountability. I know her from Chicago. those oversight days. She has provided incredible insight and guidance on civil and human rights matters. She has previous law enforcement experience for 20 years. She was a police chief as well. And then she was also an inspector general, and she also understands more about the Chicago system, which is sort of running neck and neck with Cleveland around the level of oversight that we have. And so she was through that process of helping them figure out, okay, where the issues lie and how we're going to get that settled. And so we're very excited to have her on the team. Then we also have Robert Bomer, who is a core contributor to complex law enforcement assessments. So he helps police departments adapt national best practices and industry standards to improve accountability, transparency, and community trust. And so I just wanted to highlight that we have qualified subject matter experts that are here to help us navigate this. Next, I want to talk about urban AI, urban analytics and innovation. We were able to go through a CPC records boot camp with them, and I'm going to turn it over to Martin to be able to talk about that for me.
This has been one of our most exciting projects recently. I don't know if you pay attention to the document request back and forth that happens consistently between City Hall and the CPC, Community Police Commission. But Community Police Commission requests documents from CDP, from OPS, from HR, and those documents are used for discipline hearings, for reports, for whatever review they need to do. And that process is not as straightforward as you'd imagine. First, there are some redactions that need to be made before it goes to the CPC, so there's a little bit of a gap there. And then also the process for making the requests, tracking those requests being produced, that can be very timely, lead to a lot of confusion. So instead of letting it linger, we've decided to take it head on, and we requested assistance from the city's Office of Urban AI, Urban Analytics, to help us look at our document request process from CPC to CDP to OPS, HR, back through law, back to CPC, take a look at this process and help us improve it. So that way we can really cut to the chase on what documents are missing, when they should be turned over, how to better improve those processes, and hopefully clear up a lot of the miscommunication and some mistrust that's been built between these organizations in order to improve a process and make a process that works for everybody.
Okay.
So in that effort, we met with Urban AI. We had a full day boot camp. So we're talking 8 hours of sitting in a conference room, looking at this process from start to finish and really outlining like who does what when. And this process was attended, this boot camp was attended by Urban AI, PAT, CPC, CDP, Law, OPS, and HR. So everyone that has some sort of hand in this process came to the table, because what we've found is if you make decisions in a vacuum, not everybody agrees, and that can lead to more problems than actually help. And in this process, we identified a couple of things. You know, the first thing is that the timeline that we currently have in place that we're under and obligated to perform under the court is 21 days to turn documents over to the CPC can be unrealistic. Depending on the size of the request that the CPC can make, it can be as small as something like, hey, can you send over this discipline notification letter, to as large as send us every single personnel file and discipline history file for every officer in 2024. There's no fluctuation there in the amount of time that the city would have to produce those records. So we identified that this standard 21-day timeline isn't realistic and is probably not going to, is leading to a lot of issues. We've also reflected on that there being a lot of inefficient manual processes and communications that are involved in this process. We're talking like emails. Hey, can you send me this? Yeah, I got this. I'll send it back to you. That's not really conducive to really good tracking and performance measuring. So we're going to be creating a new system to do that. And there's also a lot of unclear roles and responsibilities. Who's answering the request? How many days do you have to answer that request? What are you doing? And so we're trying to improve and create new improvements in this space. We have a a 90-day action plan through Urban AI to come together and try to handle and identify and resolve some of these key challenges. So some improvements that we have on the table that we're working towards is creating a centralized automated tracking system through Microsoft Forms or Microsoft Lists that's going to help everybody see everything in real time, where everything's at, who's got what in their basket, be able to talk in live communication, so that way we're not relying on emails or one-off phone calls that not everybody is aware of. We're also going to improve and identify clear redaction and request guidelines. So just to let you know, CDP or OPS, when you request these items, they're not going to be able to get you those items because they are, HIPAA covered or they're OLEG or LERMS covered. Those items cannot be provided to CPC. So maybe we need to be cognizant of what is and what is not allowed to be shared. And then the last thing we're looking to create in this process is like standard operating procedures. So what are the rules? Everybody be on the same page and come to an agreement about what the rules should be, and then let's work together to follow those rules. And outside those 90 days, I'm saying that I think we need everybody to continuously to come back in for check-ins. How's the new process working? Is everything going good? What can be improved? This is going to be, it's a lot more nuanced than just sending over records. So we're excited about this project, and we're really looking forward to benefiting a lot from the work that we're doing.
So in addition to the Urban AI Bootcamp, we're also working and supporting the CPC in the records request process. So we have been tracking the records requests as they come in. This tracker has been active since, I believe, 2024, when we had completed the court-approved process for records requests. So that's the bottom picture, just a snippet of what the tracker looks like. This tracker lists request numbers, what the substance of the request is, date received, date fulfilled, how long it took to fill the request, and then the types of documents that were produced. And then we're also auditing the documents that have been provided, so then we're all on the same page of what has been provided, the number of documents that is, number of pages that have been produced. So then we have just a clear picture that we can share between the CPC, between the city, between council on is CPC getting what they need? What has CPC received? And then provide a more clear path forward on, like Martin has been saying, more efficient and effective process for receiving documents. So based on this inventory so far, this has only been a review of records produced in response to 2023 requests. We've reviewed 958 documents, which entail 4,561 pages. Again, this is just the 2023 requests, and we plan to continue doing this for all the requests that the city has received, so then we can have that same page moving forward on what has been produced and figure out the most efficient process moving forward so that CPC can also get what they need to complete their duties.
Does CPC make those requests directly to the CPD or through you?
So the court-approved process, the CPC through the co-chairs or the executive director sends a request via email to specific people within the city. So that includes members of the police accountability team, members of the law department, as well as members of CDP.
Okay, but their initial request is right to CPD.
No, so it's to those same three people. So with the process that we filed in court, that we are required to make sure that members of the police accountability team, law department, and CDP are notified. The police accountability team has been tracking the request, so
Okay.
if we don't get the request, it's hard to make sure that we're following up on them.
Keep going.
Thank you, Hannah and Martin. Okay, so we're going to start wrapping it up, but I want to talk a little bit about the preparation for the monitoring team's discipline assessment. So the police accountability team is all about being objective, transparent, and understanding more about how we're getting through these processes, and so for compliance. And with that, we understand that the monitoring team has started a discipline assessment, which will go from May 2026, to October 2026. And they're going to look at discipline cases from 2025 that were heard by the Cleveland Division of Police and the Department of Public Safety. So we understand that the assessment is going to encompass a review of specifically paragraphs 240 through 249, and it's going to include cases originating from OPS, the Office of Professional Standards, and the Division of Police's Internal Affairs Unit. and it's going to determine whether discipline is fair, consistent, and aligned with due process, and that aggravating and mitigating factors are properly considered. So the police accountability team has done its absolute due diligence. We've looked nationally at other cities that have gone through this process. Chicago just completed a report about discipline, and our responsiveness is we want to make sure that we actually are working concurrently with the monitoring team so that if we find something, we can fix it. So to that end, the police accountability team has started, we look at the early informal feedback from the monitor, and we are currently implementing an internal review to analyze and track informal or any informal findings and prepare for assessment. So we have an audit process that is being led by Hannah as a performance auditor, and we are going through the discipline, and we are making sure that we are creating a tracking system so that we can be able to also tell whether or not discipline was fair and consistent, and whether or not any interventions need to be made. All right, closing it up. We have, the police accountability team understands and heard the community, heard the body, heard from other members of the administration that we were not doing enough to make sure that we looked at this idea of trust and collaboration with the community. So to that end, we heard from Kent State University, and we were able to work with them to apply for a grant, and Cleveland Division of Police and Stabilizing Trust in the Community. We were awarded this grant, so these are the Kent State University investigators, and it is in collaboration with the police accountability team, and I am the community investigator for this particular project. It was an established community partnership award that is $20,000. It will include grad students and other factors. So I want to go through, and the Kent team is here. Dr. Nader is here as well. Elias Nader, who's the lead. Thank you. All right, so the report was given, or the grant, excuse me, I want to lift up the Community Engaged Research Institute at Kent State University. So it's a collaborative hub at Kent State where the community partners faculty and students and work together to address issues that matter in everyday life. So this was nothing short of we have to engage. So it brings together lived experience, local expertise, scholarly inquiry to better understand the roots of social challenges and identify pathways towards change. So we want to make sure that we have not just theory, how things are supposed to be, but practice, how they're actually going, and that we look at the nexus of theory and practice and make sure that things are actually being executed. This is just more about what we're going to be doing, strengthening police-community relationships. We're going to be gathering community input through surveys and listening sessions this summer, and throughout the fall, we will have grad students, again, that will work with Dr. Nader, as well as the administration. We're using research and community voices to build trust and accountability, and we're creating real and practical strategies to make Cleveland safer for everyone. We will also be developing a training based on the information that we receive from the community, right? So it'll be focused on problem-oriented policing and conflict management for community meetings, because we do see that at the DPCs, and we want to make sure that we are engaged in helping them find active solutions. You have leadership, communication, and trust building strategies, environmental peace building, and collaboration across stakeholders will also be a factor. So last couple of slides here, go pretty fast. So the police accountability team will attend the fundamentals of mediation at the Cleveland Mediation Center. And so this is going to help us strengthen facilitation of community and stakeholder conversations. It's going to enhance de-escalation and conflict management skills and build our internal capacities to talk through internal conflicts that are happening. The PAT sort of sits at the middle of a lot of the oversight systems, and we want to make sure that if there are any conflicts between them, between us, between the monitoring team, between the judge, that we are well equipped to sort of go through the process and talk it out and find active and real solutions. All right, we are scheduling our annual ride-alongs. They will happen in the next couple of weeks. Pat does those. We're scheduling 2026 ride-alongs for each district in all of the shifts. And lastly, we're continuing our roll call briefings with the Division of Police, making sure that they are aware of compliance efforts as well. And then we are doing peer city information sharing, which includes site visits as well as just getting on Zoom and talking about collaborating or getting information about how to move forward. So the path forward, we're going to continue, of course, our meetings with the Department of Justice and Monitoring Team. We're going to attend district roll calls, help implement feedback from monitoring teams' assessments. We routinely update internal stakeholders and seek to engage external stakeholders as well. Encourage further progress in noted areas of growth. Advocate for recognition of the city's compliance, progress to the monitoring team, DOJ, and the court, and we will also continue to prepare for the upcoming assessments in 2026 for 2027. Thank you for your time.
Okay, you covered a lot, Doctor, and your team. So, a couple questions, and then I'm going to open up for my colleagues. Was there ever in the original DOJ deep dive on CPD, was there ever, in the course of any of it, any recommendations as it pertains to staffing levels?
My understanding is through the, to the chair, no. My understanding is that there weren't any recommendations, just the investigation.
Okay. Because I try to talk to police officers as often as I can, engage them. And one of the things I see missing, and it has to do with the number of officers that we have on the force, is that there used to be this more, what I want to call, interaction with the residents, with the community. They would come to neighborhood meetings. They would be in the schools. We had the DARE program. They would do the walk and talk. They'd get out of the cars and walk into commercial districts. And so I found that residents were able to identify with police officers based on their first name. You know, hi, Officer Greg, hi, Officer Bob, whatever the case may be. And I don't see that. And when I talk to officers, they say, Councilman, you have to understand, basically all we're doing is responding to calls for service. We're running here, we're running there. So we do not have the time to engage like we'd like to engage with the citizens, with the neighbors. Get to know people, get out there and talk with them, interact, walk on a basketball court, shoot a few baskets with the kids. I see that completely missing, and I'm trying to figure out, that's why I want to mention about staffing levels, because again, one of the great concerns we have at our neighborhood meetings, which ties into this lack of engagement, is the lack of traffic enforcement in the city, which has become a major problem in all of our wards, lack of traffic enforcement. I hear it every meeting. So, because I'm going to continue to stress to the safety directors I did yesterday, the council budgeted, which went into effect in April 1st, we budgeted the hiring of 180 police officers this year. We did it last year as well, and we didn't even get close. And we're not going to get close this year at the present course that they're on, because the classes are too small. And we've got to figure out how to increase the number of officers in the classes so we can have the kind of visibility that we all want, where we can have that engagement, where it's not about us versus them, or, you know, some type of I don't even want to use the term adversarial, but they're like, they're there to keep the peace, but other than that, there's no community engagement. We got to figure out how to get that community engagement where we are, like I saw it years and years ago. So that's one of the things I wanted to mention to you as well.
To the chair, do
Yes.
you mind if we give a quick response?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so to the chair, just in regards to community engagement, do want to just uplift some of the work that is being done in the division. So the division in each district does have community engagement officers,
Yeah.
as well as CPOP officers, CPOP coordinators, in addition to NRG officers, that stands for Neighborhood Resource Group officers. This has been something that has been growing since the last year. So the efforts of these NRG officers and CPOP coordinators is to be able to specifically focus on community engagements and quality of life issues. So the root of what CPOP is, community and problem-oriented policing is to work in conjunction with the community to figure out what the root causes of community issues are
Yep.
and address the issue there rather than engage in a typical reactive policing, like you were saying, just a call for service and addressing the issue. So we have seen increases of that across the districts with the deployment of these additional officers. There has been some increases in the recruit classes, so we were able to have dedicated officers in these NRG roles and backfill the typical patrol roles with these officers that are coming out of the academy. This is something that the command staff has been really proud of, that they are really focusing on with their districts. But just wanted to highlight that as there
Okay.
is community engagement. We can absolutely work even further on doing more community engagement. That is a lot of feedback we also heard from the youth in their engagements, that they would like to see more of the officers in their schools so they can have that type
Right.
of relationship.
Because I'm reminded, we're still basically around 800 officers down from what we were in 2000, 2001. And when we had that ability to cover the special events, to do all the things that council members wanted at the time, so we could have that partnership. And it wasn't, so the police were not looked upon as an occupying force. They were community partners. They were engaged with the neighbors. And so I'd love to see, I can't hope to see that again someday within the city where we can have that type of visibility. To my colleagues, again, on May 20th, the Federal Monitor will be here at 1 o'clock. Again, we had to work around their schedule. So please note that's the same day, I believe, as Senior Days in the morning. We'll have the Federal Monitor, and they'll make a full presentation as to where there is compliance, where there's been improvement, and where there has not. So at this time, the floor is open for questions. Yes, Councilwoman Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation and your work with the Cleveland Division of Police. I have a question. I'd like to start by going back to the slide with the police accountability team and then the 2 vacancies.
Yes.
So there's a vacancy for the project manager and then also for assistant law director. Can you describe what those positions are and what the roles of those people would be?
Sure. So I'll take the project manager and I'll actually let our assistant director of law maybe talk a little bit about what he does. I think that'll help qualify the information. So for project manager, we have a lot going on, right? So we report directly to the mayor, to council. We report to federal judge, a monitor. We also have state partners. We have the Federal Department of Justice, right? So this project manager helps us manage all of those, not just the relationships, but they also put in on as a thought partner, right? So how do we move things forward, right? What's the most efficient and effective way to get a training done? What's the best way? We have a policy and a training that needs to get approved by CPC, DOJ, monitoring team, and then submitted to the court before it can be signed off on by the chief and implemented by the judge. What does that process look like? How can you help us navigate through that process for different policies, whether it's a lactation policy, a lunch policy, or use of force? What does that look like? So we're looking for someone that can help execute those duties.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, so are you doing that role now then?
Yes.
Okay. And is there currently, are you accepting applications for that role right
So
now?
we are looking at the budget now to be able to see if we need to adjust the job description. But in that case, not accepting applications now. It is not live now, no, because we are going through just reviewing the job application or the job description, excuse me, and then we will make it live. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Through the chair, sorry, answering the assistant director of law position. So as much as we talk about community engagement and process improvements and policy, this also is an active lawsuit, right? So there's a lot of instances where you're counseling the client on what are the best legal moves to make. If there are legal questions that come up, you're giving legal advice. And then specifically on the active lawsuit mention, there's a professional rule of responsibility that attorneys must follow, where if you are a party to a lawsuit and you are represented by an attorney, the opposing counsel across the aisle from you can't contact that client without the attorney being in that communication. It's a professional rule of responsibility. So you can't talk to my client alone because they could get a lot of information out of them that they shouldn't share, or they could be asking inappropriate questions. So just like that, that applies to us in real time. So the DOJ is opposing counsel. Technically, they're attorneys. So when they come to events or meetings or say the Force Review Board, for example, we need to have an attorney present in that room, or they're talking to the city of Cleveland as a client without an attorney present. So the second assistant director of law role is really incremental because there could be multiple meetings that are happening at multiple times. You know, there are, I think, 4 DOJ members that could be attending one meeting that's happening simultaneously. So it's to help with a lot of the work that we're doing continuously together, but making sure there's adequate coverage.
Okay, thank you. And through the chair, who's doing that role now? Or you're doing it by yourself?
Yeah.
And is there outside legal counsel being hired to fill in the gaps, or are you just stretched too thin?
So through the chair, we also have instances. So say there was an instance where there was double coverage needed. There are other attorneys in the law department that we can lean on, either looking at this at the meeting and saying, okay, well, they're meeting with the Office of Professional Standards. Now, Office of Professional Standards has their own in-house law counsel that would be at that meeting. So we go, okay, you know, they're covered on that end. We can maybe deploy me as a resource in this other meeting. So we sort of will reach in-house to see if there's an attorney that can help with the coverage when it's necessary.
Okay, thank you, but no dedicated.
Through the chair, there is a dedicated outside counsel, but that outside counsel does mostly like at the actual hearing itself. So when we go to court, that outside counsel is present, but not for like the day-to-day covering meetings and things like that.
Thank you. And then moving on in your presentation, there were a couple of instances where you mentioned, you know, the significant number of upgrades, but there were also some downgrades. And in this 18th semi-annual report, you know, you mentioned there were 29 upgrades, but 3 downgrades. And then also on the use of force highlights, you mentioned 75 upgrades and 4 downgrades. Can you go over what the downgrades were?
Yes.
Whoever can handle that.
So we're going to split it up. So 2 of the downgrades were for the Inspector General. One of the downgrades was that the Inspector General did not have policies and procedures. And so we are working with, through Jensen Hughes to make sure that those things are there. To be quite frank, I know that there were policies and procedures that were created in the previous Inspector General role, but we also understand that that role reported directly to the police chief, which was not objectively appropriate. And so when we went to court to make sure that we pulled that position out, that is the space that we're in now, where that position reports exactly to the public safety director. And what we understand now is that the Inspector General is working on new policies and procedures to help streamline or understand that that line of connection. So, and for OIP.
Yeah, so for the other downgrade in the 18th semi-annual report, that's related to the Officer Intervention Program. This paragraph is related to specific requirements that have to be tracked in the database. So that's benchmark analytics, what we talked about before. We're still in the process of implementing the system. So realistically, we're not too concerned about this downgrade because once the system goes live, we'll be able to show that all of these items are being tracked. But right now, because the system isn't live, we're very close to finishing up the implementation of that. The monitoring team just doesn't have enough documentation to certify that the system is where it's supposed to be.
Okay, so through the chair, all 8 of the downgrades, I'm sorry, 8.
Those were, through the chair to the councilwoman, the Inspector General and then the OIP, those 3 downgrades were just the ones reported in the 18th semi-annual report, and I believe Martin can touch on the use of force ones.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, the use of force downgrades that we saw in the assessment, I don't have the exact paragraph numbers in front of me, but we can get you those certainly. But from what I can recall, they had to do with like administrative changes or administrative things that were happening. So not actual looking at body cam and seeing what the officers were doing and not agreeing with that. It was more along the lines of like back of the house when I know for one that's coming to mind, like ECW or electric charge weapon downloads, quarterly downloads happening. I think what happened in this case, CDP moved to a different type of ECW application, and that download procedure that was thought of and was happening previously had changed based on the change of the ECW weapon, the ECW item that they were using, and then that process of downloading and being in compliance with that sort of fell off because of that change. But because of those administrative items being identified in the use of force assessment, like I mentioned, the monitoring team is coming back to look at those hanging items, and we're doing as much as we can now to say, okay, let's button that back up. Like, what can we do to, I know that things have changed, but what can we re-implement or re-bring back on the table to make sure we're covering those bases? But the downgrades didn't have anything to do with like actual officer interaction with the community.
If I can add on to those downgrades as well, like Martin was saying, they were related to administrative functions. When it comes to, this was related to TASER and OIC, the Olisarium capsium, the like pepper spray that the officers have. Again, not really related to the actual, it's related to the use of these in that the division is required to audit the uses of them. So we have already had discussions with the command staff to make sure, hey, you know, with the changes that you've had in the system, we need to make sure that these audits are happening again. As Martin said, there was a change in the type of taser that was used. The previous versions of tasers, the upload of when a taser was used had to happen when they docked a taser. But now with the current versions that they use, that happens consistently. That's not, it's just something that has been changed with the updated technology. So it's a little bit of a dated requirement of the consent decree from being 11 years ago. That wasn't a technology that was at that stage of development at the time. So right now we're not concerned about are the TASER applications being tracked as more as, okay, we need to make sure we're consistently auditing the tracking of them. So if there is a TASER usage, we just want to make sure that the officers are reporting it in their use of force reports.
Okay, so just through the chair to be clear, when
Yes.
you talk about administrative issues, then you're talking about the documentation related to using different types of use of force, like tasers or pepper spray.
Yes, that's correct. Through the chair to a council member, and it was specifically just to those two types of intermediate weapons, and the tracking and auditing of those two.
Okay, and
to
then
be also clear as well, it is the tracking. It's they are tracked in the division. We were able to provide documentation that the uses of them are tracked. It's the requirement in the consent decree that the division is auditing the documentation.
thank you. And I realize I'm running out of time. Through the chair, do you also track the amount of time that officers spend with the documentation of use of force or other things related to their job? I know that Councilman Polincic mentioned the need for more officers on the street, the need for officers to have more time to interact with the community. I'm curious how much time officers spend on paperwork.
Sure. Through the chair, that's a question that I apologize, can't answer. It's something that we can definitely fold into our focus groups with the Kent State team and see if we can sort of find out what that is and how it's impacting their actual execution of their duties. So, but right now, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions of the committee? Oh, sorry. Okay. Councilwoman House Jones.
Good morning, everyone. Through the chair to our police accountability team. I guess I want to. I really want to. I'll just start at the report Sigma Squared that you all indicated, where an outside entity had indicated that there are no evidence of process bias, and then talked about just my first question. Do you believe that Cleveland residents believe what we are telling you in this regard?
Through the chair, no. I have asked that question, and that is one thing that the Kent team and and the Pat team is aware of, right? These are numbers, right? But it's not being felt. We understand that.
Right. So that's just, I mean, I think this is like the grounding foundational. You can say that you're great. You can say we're doing all these things. But if the people do not believe you, it doesn't. What are we doing, right? And so that's kind of like a foundational thing from a perspective I come from, right? And one of the things that you brought up is based on stop, context, location, and reason. And I don't know if you can highlight, like, it would be very interesting overall if you can share, like, where were the locations of the stops, right? Where were they actually, right? And in there, more likely than not, I can assume we're more, you know what I'm saying? Like, were the stops equally, not equally, but scattered all around the city of Cleveland? Probably not. Is probably in certain locations and neighborhoods in Cleveland, correct? Of course it was, which then would get to the compounded impact of what you will see from stops and seizures. So, like, I hear what y'all saying, but I think the context is important, right? Just overall, do you all have a percentage of where the stops were? Generally, neighborhoods they were. Like,
Do you have
in the demographics of those neighborhoods where the stops were?
Who can answer that to the best of your ability at this time?
Okay. Through the chair to the through the chair to the council person, we can definitely pull that information and share that with you. There's been a few different reports on the same data. So we have the monitoring team's assessment that reviewed the 2024 stop data. We have the Sigma Squared report, and then we have a 2-pager. So we'll make sure to provide all of that to you. Was there something else you wanted? Oh, and then we do also have a report from CDP that we can share. So we'll make sure we get that information to you. I do want to just highlight something that has been kind of a Goliath for us to address in this. There is a difference between the people who are in our community versus the driving population. So that's been a question we've really been wrestling with on how do we actually accurately assess this data, because the census data won't necessarily completely align with the driving population, since there are plenty of people who come into Cleveland to work but don't live in Cleveland. And then vice versa, there's plenty of people who live in Cleveland who maybe aren't part of the driving population. So I just wanted to highlight that as a limitation in our analyses and something that we're continuously working towards figuring out how to best analyze this data.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand what you are saying. I guess a part of that, how are those things identified in the analysis that you are providing, right? Because the data will be able to tell you with the stops and searches, are they Clevelanders or not? And Clevelanders in the broad sense, like Clevelanders because you work here, or technically you're a Cleveland stakeholder. Clevelander because, your children are here. Like there are those connections beyond just living here, right? Yes. And so I think if you identify those, that it can tell a story beyond just whether you have the ability to drive or not, but understanding the person's connection to Cleveland. And so this is really good. The really point, because I've continuously asked about the community survey through the chair to the team. I know that, well, as it was presented to me, it did not appear that the police accountability team and or the administration prioritized doing a community survey, as it was reported that, oh, that's the monitoring team's responsibility, right? And so I guess I'm going to ask you, what now is your perspective on doing a community survey on a continual basis, with the understanding that you are advocating to get out of a consent decree where the monitor is not, they haven't been doing it anyway. So can you share that perspective?
Absolutely. So the community I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's all right. Go ahead.
To share. The community survey will be completed through the Kent team, and we have Dr. Nader here who can talk about that. But the community survey is something that we're starting with this summer. We're starting with focus groups, and we are committed to making sure that that data continues to go back into a feedback loop for training, and that the community understands what the data says, what the survey says, and that they are active participants. So we are going through the process now to create the survey. It is 95% finished, and what we're doing now is waiting for it to go through the internal review board or the IRB with Kent State University.
Okay.
Through the chair to Dr. Anderson, how was that survey created in partnership with the monitoring team and the Cleveland Police Commission?
So through the chair, what's going to be great about this response is that the Community Police Commission also has to do a survey per the consent decree. So they are working on one. The monitoring team has to do a survey per the consent decree. They're also working on one. We've given our feedback about that, and they're doing an RFP. And then the city will also be doing a survey, surveying different partners. So we are giving feedback amongst each other.
Okay. So okay, let me ask a question. Through the chair to the team, what would be the problem with doing, I'm gonna say, a collective survey? Because again, there are reports of just talking about survey fatigue.
Yes.
Right? We are always talked to, we're always asked the same questions, but we never capture things to show and prove. And from my observation, I always tell people just don't believe none of us. They have a lack of faith in this entire system. And I'm talking about specifically for communities who have had the most negative engagements. None of these processes are building confidence. They don't. And so I'm trying to understand. I hear you're saying is, oh, Kent State is going to do the survey. CPC is going to do the survey. The administration is going to do it. And that don't even make sense to me. Why would the PAT, how is it not that the PAT is a part of the city of Cleveland and representing the city of Cleveland, so why y'all got two different surveys?
It's not two different, to the chair, it's not two different surveys. So that's why on the slide that said that we were partners, so Kent State is a co-investigator, I'm the other co-investigator, and it's a joint survey that's coming out. So it's
only
not,
going to be 3 surveys or
yes,
4 surveys?
So it's 3 surveys because the monitoring team has to do it per compliance with the consent decree. The CPC has to do it per compliance with the consent decree. So those are 2 that cannot be changed. And then we are doing one that is working towards looking at building trust in different ways. So they are all focused and targeted on different subject matters.
But I guess that's the thing. Monitoring. Okay, if this is what we're saying. I just don't. Where's a collective vision? That's what I'm trying to understand. Because we, and again, I know my time is coming. I'll come back on as it relates to the officer surveys. I don't think we talked about that. How do we survey our officers and communicate
Respond
that
to that, and then I'll call
To the
them.
chair, the monitoring team will have a portion of their survey that will monitor the officers, and then the Kent survey will also have one that focuses on trust with the officers. The culmination of the surveys or the recommendations that come from the survey, in my thought, is the synergy that will come from the collaboration at that process, or at that point in the process.
Thank you.
Excuse
Okay,
me.
so maybe this is my point through the chair to the team. When was the last time this was done? Maybe that, and I'm trying to get to a point of why is this not just a part of what we do? Like, you should baseline, like, regardless if anybody told you a consent decree, like, baseline, you should talk to your people.
Okay.
Like, I think that's where my biggest disconnect is. Is like, why don't we talk to our people, and I'm talking about in very structured ways, to have information to show and improve and highlight our strengths? Like, why are we not doing this? I'm talking about, because this is year 5 for me, right? Like, I can't imagine teams that don't do that.
Okay.
And now we're saying, oh, now we're doing it now. Okay, so what is the plan to make it a part of how we are operating as the city of Cleveland? Like, that's the point where I don't see. I hear, oh, we're talking to Kent State for this moment. Okay, and how do we, where are we going in this to make it a part of what we do? Because any team that is not analyzing, not only, you got to talk to the officers, understand their perspective in a very real way. Like, that should be even part of the system when we're talking about our budgets and things of that nature. Like, none of this stuff, and it's like everything is done in isolation. So I'm not getting it. And because this is year 5, for me, and I know we ain't did it in the 5 years that I've been here, this is like kind of a litmus test of what something is not, it's just not connecting to me. And like the desire, the wanting to do it, the actually doing it, and the practice of doing it. Like, this is a practice.
Okay.
So
Thank-
I'll stop
Thank
there, and
you.
I'm gonna come back.
Councilman Slife.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm having some problems with my voice, so
That's all right.
stick with me. First, I wouldn't expect you all to have the answer at this moment, but through the chair, when we talk about recruitment, I'm interested in also getting a breakdown of our success at recruiting residents. I don't know if that's something that can be shared with us at a later point. I think that our ability to recruit residents, speaks to the level of trust we have with the community if we are successfully recruiting from all corners of it. One, and two, these are opportunities for good middle class paying jobs in a low income community. So I want to make sure that we're availing ourselves of that. So if it's just possible to get that break, even just like looking at zip codes and stuff, I think it'd be an interesting thing to unpack. But go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman, just to clarify, do you want the number of residents who are get accepted to the academy and then become police officers, or like the number of residents who apply? I just want to make sure.
Why don't I follow up with you offline, because I'm sort of interested in the whole continuum, because
Okay.
I think there's also a question then if a lot of people are applying, but something's happening where they're not following through the process, or they're not getting hired. Like, if there's something along that trajectory where we need to identify a breaking point that we need to solve for, I think I'd like to understand
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
And then just to follow up as well, the division does create a recruitment report, so we'll make sure to provide that to council. I believe the most recent one they completed was for 2024, but we'll make sure we provide that to the body.
Okay, thank you. There's been a lot of areas of achievement, and you noted some of the areas where there was a little bit of backwards momentum. Are you able to kind of broadly speak to like the areas where we continue to not be achieving? It's not like, and maybe it's more easily pulled out when the monitoring team is here, but where are the areas where we are needing to shift our focus increasingly?
Through the chair, I would say for me answering that question, when I look at the semi-annual report and I look at where we're at in terms of compliance, there are very few like non-compliance paragraphs that we don't have like a plan for, or we aren't working on something. It just hasn't happened yet. You know, whether it be in the OIP, you know, benchmark, for example. You know, we are working every day with benchmark, the Urban AI, with data, with CDP to get that program off the ground and running. When it comes to some data reports, you know, getting into compliance with those, understanding exactly what the monitoring team wants and needs is critical. And something I will bring up on that effect is that since we've had the new monitor, Christine Cole, her team has done an excellent job of creating these sessions called working groups. So we'll have working groups for each one of the sections, like whether it be office professional standards or data and technology or OIP, where we'll meet like bi-weekly or once monthly, depending on how much we need to really hammer in on some of the paragraphs that might be a little, what are you exactly looking for? Or what are we missing? You know, so we can have that blunt one-on-one conversation. Look, we've provided you this and you're saying it's not enough. What do we need? And those have been so helpful. Like her team bringing those working group meetings on has made a big difference. We're having open dialogue about items that are missing, and they're actually getting a better plan and understanding of where we're coming from in terms of the items that we've done to reach that level we're at now, so that way they can have an accurate understanding, because maybe they're not aware of like the specific one-on-one meeting that Benchmark had with CDP last week where they talked about the data block that happened, but they're working through navigating it. You know, these work group meetings have been really, really instrumental in helping us work through exactly what we need to do, what we need to provide, and when we're going to do it. It's been great.
And then to add through the chair to the council person, just specifics on where the number of paragraphs we have in each compliance category. So we currently have 22 paragraphs still in non-compliance, 59 in partial compliance, 79 in operational, 111 in general, and then 53 in substantial and effective compliance. When it comes to a lot of these non-compliance and partial compliance paragraphs, as Martin said, a lot of what we are realizing in these working groups is there's just a lack of documentation to show to the monitoring team that processes are happening. So something that we've heard a lot of is, how does command staff engage with the data that our data team's collecting? They talk continuously. Our data team sits in a justice center with the chief and the deputy chief. They meet continuously, but they don't always document, you know, the deputy chief came down and asked me for this data that I provided to them. So we're working with our internal partners to make sure that we document all of the work that's been happening, because a lot of the concerns that we're hearing from the monitoring team is not that the work isn't happening, it's that we're not seeing how it happens.
Okay, thank you. Kind of two more things. One, I've also been thinking about kind of the community feedback and how we measure how we measure police community relationships, because it's sort of an abstract thing. And I will say one of my concerns at a macro level, beyond just police accountability, but sort of a lot of stuff coming through this building, is that there's we have I fear a tendency sometimes to take the feedback from a very small engaged group of people and sort of extrapolate that out as citywide or ward-wide or neighborhood-wide public opinion. And I always have to remind myself that most people aren't at the meeting, you know. And in fact, one of my closest friends, one of his lines to me one time was like, "I don't want to go to the meeting. I pay you to go to the meeting. Like, isn't that what you do? You go to the meeting. I stay at home and I feed my kids." So I guess I would like to understand more about how we are trying to reach audiences that, for lack of better terms, aren't inclined to come to the meeting, and how we measure forward momentum or backward momentum in police community relationships in an environment where I think a lot of people just have understandable inclinations to be skeptical. And at what point, how do you statistically determine that something could be happening that does not align with public opinion or the opposite?
To the Through the chair to the councilwoman, thank you so much for that question. I will ask Chair, is it acceptable if, Chair Polinsik, if the Kent State team, Dr. Nader, comes to speak a little bit about this? So I can speak about this, but he also has experience in Baltimore with their consent decree, working them through the same process, right? So understanding that strengthening police and community relationships, surveys and listening, building trust and accountability, and looking at real practical strategies to be able to move forward, and also how do we statistically measure that? Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah. If
Dr.
they,
Nader, when it comes to the table.
yeah, if you'd like to come forward, and then I'll leave it there and not ask my fourth question because I'm sure I'll be up against my time. But I think it's useful to understand.
Sure, yeah, I'll try to keep it brief, but
Introduce yourself
Sorry,
officially.
Elias Nader, Kent State University.
Thank you.
We are aware of the problem that sometimes a lot of the feedback loop that comes back is from residents that are much more engaged or have stronger opinions on either side of the platform. And so part of what we're going to try to do in our recruitment process is target people that wouldn't normally be in places like council meetings. And so we're going to be doing some door knocking, attending community events, and stationing some of our students that are helping with conducting the survey in places like libraries to try and gather a wider array of respondents. In addition to that, we're going to be running some focus groups, and so part of the goal is to try and encourage those people who are responding to the surveys, make them aware of focus groups that will be occurring within their districts to attend and provide feedback that way.
Okay. How much time do I have? 1 minute.
1:10.
In 1 minute or less. Obviously, we all know that the administration has moved forward with a potential process of having the consent decree monitoring from the federal government go away. It's been very clearly stated that that does not mean that the work would stop. It's just that it wouldn't be in the involvement. But my understanding is that the police accountability team's existence is rooted in the consent decree. So I will say I'm curious what the thoughts for the police accountability team are moving into the future. Whether the end of the consent decree as we know it is near term or long term, how that affects police accountability and your office's work.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Through the chair to the councilman. So one of the things that I would like to note is that my understanding is that the police accountability team will remain and continue the work, not just sort of what we've presented today, but also compliance with the consent decree, but which we're doing status quo, but we're also working on looking towards what happens after the consent decree. And I say that because whether or not the consent decree ends tomorrow or 5 years from now, the reality is that, and this is from my experience working with consent decrees across the country, there is no succession plan. So the consent decree that you've built, the system that you built, is your succession plan, right? So how do we support that? How do we make sure that it's in place, it's intact, it is well resourced, and that it is well sort of occupied with stakeholders, internal and external, that can help provide to that. So that is my response, that
Okay.
the work is still continuing to make sure that
Okay.
we make sure, yeah.
Thank you. We're going to continue our dialogue with you, but we have two pieces of legislation we have to move on to. So this portion is, we're through. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. We'll be working with you, and we hope, and just correction, I made a mistake on the time, on the dates here. I was corrected. On May 13th, excuse me, at 10 o'clock, the DOJ will be here. I was confused with the 20th.
The
DOJ will be here, the Federal Monitor will be here May 13th at 10 a.m. And then on May 20th, which will be a special meeting at 1 o'clock, that will be with the hospitals over the issue with hospital security.
Okay.
So again, Dr.
Understood.
Anderson, thank you, and thank you for your
Sure.
dialogue with me.
Chair, if
Thank
I may,
you.
just one, I apologize,
Okay.
one more thing.
Go.
So I wanted to just mention that the academy within the community, each academy class goes through a reverse ride along where they go out
Yes.
into the community
Yes.
and they meet with residents, they go to barbershops, so we are actively working through this lack of trust and trying to figure out ways that
Thank
we
you.
can help remedy it.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Okay, we are having two additional pieces of legislation. You are all notified of this because, again, we're trying to move stuff before we go into the summer session. I'm going to take ordinance number 1406-2025 as amended. who's here from the administration on ordinance number 1406-2025, an emergency ordinance about making public improvements to speed tables. Okay. Come to the table, gentlemen. Ordinance number 1406-2025 is amended by council members Bishop, Polensek, Harrison, and Griffin by department request, an emergency ordinance determining the method of making the public improvement of repairing, constructing, and installing various speed tables citywide for traffic calming and pedestrian safety purposes, and authorizing the Director of Public Works to enter one or more public improvement requirement contracts for the making of the improvement. It was read for the first time on November 10th, 2025, was approved by the Director of Public Works, approved by the Director of Public Safety, approved by the City Planning Commission, and approved by the Director of Finance. We have Director John Laird here and Commissioner Mavick from Traffic Engineering. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Tell us what this is.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. This piece will allow us to go out to be able to get contracts to be able to put in speed tables. We want to be able to keep up with the pace of council's request for speed tables. Right now, our internal staff doesn't have the capacity to be able to do resurfacing and all the other things we do, and as well as with the speed tables. We can do some, we just can't do the capacity that's being requested. So what we are asking to be able to do is to go out for contract, to be able to bring in a contractor to help us work alongside of us as we put in speed tables. So I have Commissioner Mavick here to talk more about the details of that. We did send out a list. It was late, and I do apologize for that, but we did send out a list of where the speed tables are currently right now, where they will be going, and the funding related to those. So I have Commissioner Mavick to answer any questions that you may have about speed tables and how that works.
Okay, so look get this correct. Each council member has a list of where they're at now.
So on that spreadsheet, it will show on the spreadsheet we gave you, it will show the ward, it'll show the location, where they are, and where they're proposed to go, and the funding associated with it.
Okay, so explain, because we see some wards have more speed tables, some wards do not. Give us the rationale.
Sure.
You pushed it and bring it close to you. Okay.
Yeah, through the chair, the council member. So each time we get a request, whether through the portal or through a council person, the division will actually go and do a traffic study and look at what the speeds are, the volumes, and fit it into a criteria of priority. And so we've done that through that portal. We've done it through meeting with council members. We've done it through cold calls. So we count everything. In the last 3 years, we've done 850 studies citywide. And so when you're looking at that sheet, the mobility funds, that is the actual ARPA funds of the city sponsored ones. And so the streets that show or have that mobility are the ones that are being funded through that program. There's also a column for discretionary. Some council folks put discretionary funds in. And then there's the maintenance, I believe it's called the maintenance, which is included in the resurfacing. So that table that you have has everything that we have on record that where speed tables are currently or where they're being scheduled to be installed.
Okay. Question I have, because this come up at a couple neighborhood meetings. As a result of what we call traffic calming methods in the city of Cleveland, or steps, I'm being told by some police officers, and again, I have no way to document this, that many of the traffic calming steps that we have taken have resulted in more accidents. Is there any correlation to that people are speeding, going through the spike lanes, it's having a negative impact. So I'm trying, is there any validity to that?
So through the chair. So there's a lot of information that we've collected over the years
Okay.
related to the speed tables and how they actually do slow traffic down. we've done before counts, we've done
Okay.
after counts.
Right.
There's other methods that we've used. I think a lot of folks are familiar with our mini roundabouts on Franklin. We're also proposing them on several other streets. That has worked fantastically. It actually reduced crashes on Franklin by 70% and reduced speeds by almost 10 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So that's very effective. There are the bike lanes. They technically call a road diet. A lot of those will be getting some posts so that folks aren't driving into the bike lane. So there's a lot of retrofits that we're working through, but everything that we've done as it relates to traffic calming, some have been more successful than others, there's no doubt. But I think what we're doing is learning what through analysis prior and an analysis afterwards and seeing what works the best.
Okay.
I think we have more data that shows that it slows down traffic than we do that it
So,
increases
okay,
accidents.
because that's a lot, because I was at a neighborhood meeting where someone got up and rant and raved that there's more accidents in the neighborhood because of the traffic calming steps being taken, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just wondering if there was any correlation, citywide data.
No, we don't
collected.
have any data.
And to the chair, we have a group that out of MoCap, there's Vision Zero, who keeps track of all of that data. Like any
Okay.
crash information that you need or the
Okay,
council
so-
needs, we could get very quickly.
Okay, you, to the director, you just mentioned, what are these things called again that you put out in the street? These posts, what are they called?
Through the chair, that was is a program called the Centerline Hardening. And so what that's meant to do is keep people from cutting the left turn through the crosswalk, so it makes them actually go around it so that they're not.
Well, what are
flying
those things called? What are
It's
they?
just the linear posts.
Delineator.
Correct.
So before you put delineators up in the neighborhood, is there any engagement with the council person or the community?
Through the chair, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we've had a lot of engagement related to
Okay.
posts and things that we're not just showing up and throwing
okay,
them in.
so I had funeral directors call me about why they were put up in front of churches, because now they can't, for funerals, they cannot pull up
Okay.
the funeral cars in front of the churches
Okay.
because of the delineators. So they've called me about the one on West 65th. I'm trying to think of the large church that's there on West 7th.
That the,
St. Coleman's. They said they can't pull up in front of the church. And who put, they called me because I'm chairman of public safety. He said, well, who put those up there? Who said put them up there? So,
Through the chair, that was part of the original West 65th Street project. So those were installed very recently. I did not hear that complaint, but we'll look into it.
okay, it was the Creation Funeral Home called me.
Okay.
So I don't know whose ward that is, Austin, because they said it's created a major problem for them for funerals at the church. So again, I would hope you would talk to the councilman about that, because that might have been authorized before he became councilman. I don't know.
That the councilman was aware of the project.
Councilman Davis is aware of
Yes.
that? Okay, well, I think then again, he make sure he's aware, he needs to talk to Mr. James Creation at the Creation Funeral Home, who was pretty outspoken about it at a recent event I was at. So, okay, members, you have we have the legislation before us. You have the list of where the speed tables are at present and where they're proposed. Is there, to the commissioner and to the director, is there any flexibility as it pertains to where you're proposing them now?
Through the chair, the council member, we've met with most council folks, not all,
Yes.
and we're scheduling those.
Okay.
So we're working through, this list is valid as of last week, based on conversations and our studies.
but absolutely flexible. So
Okay,
if a
'cause
council
I
person,
have not had that meeting.
Yep.
So that's why I want to make
So
sure.
we can make sure you have
Okay,
one.
I want to make sure.
We'll get one with
the
you.
Commissioner and I sit down. because
Absolutely.
There's a couple on here I'm questioning.
Okay, we
So-
can absolutely
Okay,
get
are there questions of? Yes, Mr. Jones.
First, this is the first time since we've had like speed tables where I've had an opportunity to talk to the administration. So I just want to just give kudos to the administration because when I got in there, they had all the engineers, everybody was sitting at the table. And they were able to show me why certain areas were able to get the speed bumps due to the fact that traffic patterns. So it seemed like they had, Mr. Chairman did the work, the homework, had the information in place, and the areas that are concerned, they had some of them on there. And Mr. Chairman, one of the things is, as you know, one of the things that you know is the fact that, you know, this is one of the biggest issues that our citizens are calling us on. And it's due to, Mr. Chairman, code traffic enforcement. It's a shame that the city, unfortunately, has to spend hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars to put speed bumps, Mr. Chairman, in our streets. It has never happened before. And a part of the reasons why it is happening is because we do not have code traffic enforcement. If we had traffic enforcement up and down our streets, like in other neighborhoods, then we wouldn't have this issue. Mr. Chairman, I just had a car flipping over in my neighborhood. I have a flip over in my neighborhood at least once a month. That is unheard of, Mr. Chairman. It's unprecedented. It has never happened before. And so now the city has to go into its coffers, unfortunately, and spend hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to put speed bumps. And it's so bad that citizens, Mr. Chairman, on Harvard Avenue want speed bumps on our main strips. And so I tell them that we can't do that. And so I would ask, Mr. Chairman, at the end of this, that the director tell us why we can't have speed bumps, because it's a major request. They want the speed bumps on Lee Road. They want the speed bumps on Harvard. They want the speed bumps on Kinsman. So I'm on the phone constantly, Mr. Chairman, telling our citizens we can't have those speed bumps. And every street in my neighborhood just about has requested speed bumps. And that's because the traffic is going faster than the 25 miles an hour zones. They're going at speeds at 50 and 60 miles an hour. And this should concern the entire council. This should concern the entire council because the issue is important. And the council has to make a decision how we're going to work to really get our police up. And at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, it's important because you're our leader, and you've been our leader for quite some time here on this committee, and a good one at that. But we need to get more police on the streets. And just merely being able to keep up with the retiring police is not enough. It does not suffice. And so at the end of the day, we need more police on our street. I'm a proponent that supports more police. I've sat here at this table and watched her squander $500-some million on these other programs. And I want to be able to say, for the record, I wasn't for it on a lot of these programs that we put in our neighborhoods because I haven't even seen some of these people come back to talk about how effective some of these programs have been in terms of our neighborhoods. But what I do know is that the basic citizens who live in the city of Cleveland are very concerned about having police visibility in their communities and their neighborhoods. We're going to have to get serious if we're going to improve traffic conditions and save lives in the city of Cleveland. We're going to have to put a traffic enforcement system in place that's efficient and effective. And if we don't do it, if we're paying attention to everything else when we're sitting here at this table versus the most important thing is what our citizens want. And their voice is coming to me every day, Mr. Chairman. And when we sit at this table, we don't seem to have no solutions. It is a part of the responsibility of the council to have some solutions to these issues. And then discuss with the administration so that we can start getting traffic enforcement in our neighborhoods. To only have 2 traffic enforcement cars in the entire 4th district covering 6 councilmatic zones is unacceptable, Mr. Chairman. And so now we got these gentlemen here trying to fix a problem that is a police problem. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'm not happy camper with sitting here for the last 9 years talking about there needs to be safety in our communities. And you sat and said it until you turned red over here about the people walking out of the city of Cleveland because they don't have the safety and security they need. That's a real factor, Mr. Chairman. If we're going to stop the east side from its decline, we have to have the visibility of the police department. We must have an improved traffic enforcement piece, And we must, as this council, make some priorities to do it. And so I don't sit here just to be talking. And I hope that some of this is settling in somewhere with somebody, because it is a major issue, Mr. Chairman, and in such a fact that I even have people come to meetings saying there's certain parts of the city of Cleveland we just don't travel in anymore. They shouldn't have to say that, and they're a resident in this city. They shouldn't have to talk about these issues like this. And so with that being said, if the director, and I appreciate the director's work, and I appreciate the administration work, trying to find some possible solutions here to slow down and calm down some of the traffic. But even with that, Mr. Chairman, I've seen some of these cars hit these traffic bumps and then knocked into trees and tore up people's yards and smashing into businesses and the whole 9 yards. So that's not a permanent solution, Mr. Chairman, to have speed bumps. And so I know that. So at the end of the day, it's not my will. It's the will of this council. It's the will of this administration that has to make this a political will. And the citizens have to make it a political will. So just like it is with anything else, we have those citizens that should come down here and talk about how bad it is and start asking about how we're delegating our assets. We have over $400 million going into our safety program. To me, it makes no sense to only have 2 traffic enforcement cars in every one of our districts. We should have at least 6 traffic enforcement cars in our districts at all times, helping our people out and slowing down this traffic. And some folks may get mad at me. It's not an intent to make you get mad. It's what I'm dealing with every day. And so I'm tired of dealing with it. And I hope that all those big people who getting paid all them big bucks over there come up with an ideal and a plan to help us resolve this issue, because what they're doing right here is a Band-Aid job. It's putting a Band-Aid over a sore that is not going to be fixed. And the only way to fix it, the only way to deal with it, is to be able to have the people out there who's supposed to deal with that, and that's police and traffic enforcement. And if we can have the state troopers, Mr. Chairman, out here on our streets enforcing the law, we should have our own people doing just the same. And with that, Mr. Chairman, to the director, I would like you to tell our citizens who are listening right now, because I get this question all the time, why we can't put speed bumps on Lee Road, on Harvard, on Miles Avenue, and on Kinsman Avenue. And I'm going to refer them to come to this tape and see this tape.
Thank you. Who would care to respond to that? But before you do, to Councilman Jones, because before you got here, we had talked about with the Dr. Anderson and police oversight as it pertains to staffing levels, because we know we are down still large numbers of police officers from what we once were. And again, I want to say to my colleague and to the viewing public, the council does not hire. We do not fire. We do not deploy. We do not administer. So we don't administer the division of police. We provide the funding, but we don't administer. So, Councilman, I share your concerns about traffic enforcement or the lack of it, but it's not a result, it's not because of city council. I want to make that clear. It's not because of what you or the rest of us have not done here. We have provided the funding to the division of police.
Right,
We've done
Mr. Chairman.
that.
We've given them everything you asked
But-
for.
but
But
again, I wanna
Mr.
make it
Chairman,
clear.
the council is culpable because we can stand up and say what we want, and because we hold the purse strings, Mr. Chairman, we can pause everything. Now, I've been here long enough
Yeah.
to know and see a lot of things that have happened here in this city, and I've seen the council change entire policies and processes and said this is what we want to do, and it happened. So all I'm saying here is that we're all leaders.
Yep.
And we're all culpable to the problems that are happening in the city of Cleveland. The administration can't take the entire jacket. This council has to be responsible for its tasks and responsibilities. And that task and responsibilities is to say, hey, we're not going to pass another piece of legislation until we got our police numbers up and give us a full table on this. And so at the end of the day, we do have the authority and the power to push around what we need to have on behalf of the citizens we represent. So I don't agree with that. I understand it, but I don't agree with it because I've seen too much in the short period of time God has allowed me to see here at this table.
Okay.
Nor do I accept that proposition.
Thank you, and I disagree with you, but that's what we're here for. We can
I'm just
argue,
letting you know
we
I
can
don't agree with
disagree,
that at
and
all.
we can move forward. The commissioner and the director who are here cannot comment on traffic enforcement. would you care to comment on the speed tables on main streets?
Yeah, through the chair, the council member. The intent of the program originally was for the neighborhood traffic calming, which on neighborhood streets. So the designs that we currently have that are being installed as part of whether it be this contract, if the legislation does pass, and what the Division of Streets does, are designed specifically for residential streets. We do. They're designed specifically for residential streets. There are higher levels of design that are being contemplated now and may go in as part of a pilot along St. Clair. That's a project that's sponsored by the state. It's called the Target Speed. Folks may have heard that there's a, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
There was a grant awarded to the city for $5 million to redesign St. Clair for traffic calming purposes. The speed tables on main streets have to be designed in a way that matches the speed limit. The state gets involved because most of them will be on state routes. They have to review the design. It's not as simple as going out there and just putting a speed table on a major street. We're also working with our safety partners to ensure that we're not putting them in locations where they're not responding. Lee Road and Harvard are major response routes, along with every other major city or major street in the city. So we have to take a lot of things into consideration, where they get installed, how they get designed, and those types of things. But there is, we are putting them on the.
Through the chair, thank.
We don't do it in the, Mr. Chairman, we, just for clarification, because that's the thing we need to drive home, because I've gotten over 75 phone calls just in this quarter alone about putting speed bumps, and that's a lot of phone calls. So you know that's a major issue, Mr. Chairman. And to Mike Polensek, you know you're the baddest dude on the planet handling your constituent complaints. So you know when you get about 5 to 10 issues, that's major. 75 is an overload for me. And I have to tell people constantly, we don't do that. So I just wanted you to be clear with, we don't do that and why we don't do that.
Okay. Is it true that, and please correct me if I'm heard incorrect information, that EMS has stated they have a concern with speed tables being on main streets? Is there any validity to that?
Through the chair, we met directly with the director and commissioners of all of the safety forces and
Okay.
discussed speed tables. We were assured that they were comfortable. They did, to your point from an earlier committee, they did want them signed better and
Yes.
better marked. And so we do have it, like I brought a sample I can provide for you of kind of the updated signing package.
Okay, can you share that with us now? What they're going to look like? Because that's been a big rub with the speed tables. Nobody sees them. The paint has worn off. They don't believe there's sufficient signage.
So you see we're double mounting the signs. The pavement markings are going all the way across. We're adding the posts to the side of the table. So it's a pretty substantial upgrade.
And they're going to be, what color are they going to be, the table itself?
Excuse me?
What color is the table going to be? Because in Akron, they're
it'll be the
really
white.
delineated. They really jump
It'll
out
be the
at
white
you.
paint. And so
Here.
on the side markers, you'll see that's like an obstruction.
Yeah.
So they'll pop. You'll definitely
Well,
know.
we want to. Why not using day glow paint? Why not? Why not something that jumps out at you?
We can investigate it, but honestly,
Have you seen the ones in Akron?
Yeah, those are modular ones. Those are built in a factory, and then they go and they bolt them to the ground, and they remove them every winter.
Okay, but what I'm saying, something that you can see, with the kind of paint that you can see.
What we can do is look into a thermoplastic one and put it down. But
Fundamentally, people, that's the problem. But no, people, if you are not speeding, then you wouldn't experience
Yeah.
the damage, some people have, but they need to slow down. That's the purpose.
They need to slow down, but they also need to see them, and that's been. Well, hey, we've all experienced it. I'm saying I complain, as the commissioner knows, I complain all the time. You can't see them. The paint wears off of them. The insufficient signage. If you have someone who doesn't know the neighborhood, boom. And I've got people complaining about that aspect. So, okay. Any other questions on this piece? Yes, Councilman Slife.
Two things and then a question. One, the posts on the side of the speed tables on Chatfield Avenue have been very effective in keeping people on the road because there were people trying to skirt and have basically the passenger side tires not have to go over the speed table, which I don't understand the logic because the car is still going over the speed table. But I think that's something to implement citywide. My only suggestion in painting is, in addition to on them, could there be some like I know in Lakewood they've done like a chevron on the road that kind of expands out to the speed table so that starts like a triangle, then it's widest at the beginning of it, so that I think that could help increase. That's just a thought. The other is I'll jokingly call this the Austin Davis law because apparently he's doing 50 new speed tables. So I am texting with him and he would like to be added as a co-sponsor if the clerk wants to confirm that. But talking to him now. The question, so the funding for this is the citywide mobility, is the ARPA money, and then there's council discretionary dollars. For the maintenance aspect, what's the funding source for the maintenance? I'm trying to find one here so I can say what it's called.
Through the chair, the
Maintenance
council member.
integrated.
Yeah, that's part of the resurfacing program.
Part of the
So
resurfacing.
those are the ones that the council requested speed tables as part of their street resurfacing. So we're capturing those and putting them under the maintenance.
Okay, so ultimately that's general fund.
Yes.
Okay.
No, that,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, through the chair to the councilman, that's actually through bonds,
Bonds.
capital money, to
Okay.
the resurfacing.
I'm asking because to the chairman, our staff had recommended a amendment that in lieu of saying charging to the proper appropriation accounts, essentially to name those accounts. So we were given the 10400, which is ARPA, and the 10166, which is discretionary. I guess the question would be what the proper funding account number would be for the street resurfacing dollars, so that we're not trying to limit the ability to do that as much as we're trying to make sure that what's being spent is not, you're not charging it out of, the general fund, if the understanding is that it's not general fund, right?
Yep, through the chair, yeah, so that's, I would say the majority of this is, well, we will probably have some grant funds as well, though, just given this program is kind of getting a life of itself. So as much flexibility as we can have with funding is probably going to be needed, at least in this first year or so, because there's capital money being used. There's possibly grant money that's going to be used. So there's going to be a different set of pots that we're going to use to do this. So I do understand that the level of control that the council wants to have. I just don't want us to get limited if we get a source of funding to be able to do something, and then we're stuck because we can't use that pot. So
Okay.
if there's a, if you want to cap it at some other way, but I would ask for some kind of flexibility just for the sources that we use.
You had a question? Follow up?
Mr. Chairman, I'm
Wait a minute.
one for not camping it
Now wait a
because
minute.
we got too many issues.
I'm trying to understand this. He just indicated that Councilman Davis has 50 speed tables. Who's paying for that?
Through the chair, the council member, through a discretionary fund.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the ARPA funds are being divided equally, correct?
So-
Among the 15 wards.
So I will say they are not being, if you looked at the chart, you would see they're not being equally done because we respond based on a request.
Now, wait a minute. But see again, John. I know I have more requests than this.
Also, to the
Yeah.
chairman, Councilman Davis's list here is overwhelmingly listed as council discretionary dollars.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but I just want to make sure that for the ARPA funds, what we do, we go by the studies. So if a study is made, if someone goes online, makes a study, once we respond, if everything falls in line with the study, then we apply the ARPA funds to that. So it's not that we're trying to favor one area over the other. We're just responding to what we're getting in through the request being made for a study. And once the study is actually, if all the requirements are met, then we apply the money for those. But again, it's not targeted. It's just that's the way the kind of the study comes back to
It's
us.
just to tie into that a little bit. So the portal was where the citizens or the council put that information. They put it into 311 years ago.
Okay.
And all of that information was brought to one central location. Since we took over the program late last year, we've gathered all the documents, what we counted, what's available, what was approved or what was priority citywide, and laid it all out. And that's what you're looking at right now. We also looked at, and we have it all mapped, if we can provide the map if you'd like to see it, of everywhere where we've done a study, everywhere where we've had the complaint or the request, whether it be from the council or from the citizens, it's all mapped out. And so what we're trying to do, there are some gaps within that framework of citywide where we don't have as much information or data as maybe some other areas. So we're trying to catch back up to
Okay.
some of these areas. But keep in mind that when we do those studies, and as it relates to the ARPA funding, those streets had to reach a certain threshold in order to be fundable based on best practices from other cities, from Akron's and
Yes.
from the Columbus's, to try to put them where we needed them the most as it relates to the speeding issue.
Okay, Councilman Slade, you said the floor.
Yes, and for what it's worth, when we started I understand that it's not going to be evenly split. When we started this program, my enthusiasm for speed tables was sort of tempered by the fact that the speeds in then Ward 17 didn't justify implementing any in Ward 17 in the initial round. So I appreciate that we're also trying to tackle the worst of the worst speeding, and then that kind of creates a workflow. With that being said, I am actually going to, I think, withhold from making an amendment in this very moment because I'm having some conversations with staff and I want to make sure that I have it right. But I think what it's going to build to probably in finance is, in lieu of saying proper appropriation accounts, I'd like to see it state like ARPA discretionary bond issuances and other grant dollars, so that we have them named instead of proper appropriation accounts within the legislation is sort of vague. But so since I want to make sure I do it right and not be amending amendments, I'll bring it next week. But just anticipate that.
Okay. So, I want to get this clarified once again. How much money, ARPA funds, are being dedicated within the course of this legislation for speed tables?
It's about, what, 7?
Yeah, so they're currently the budget stands at $770,000.
Okay. And so it was not divided equally, the ARPA funds, between the 15 wards.
Through the chair, that's correct.
And then, which I don't agree with, I'm going to tell you that right now. Now, if someone doesn't want the speed tables, that's their prerogative. But so, then again, if we want those of us who might be on the short end of that, then if we want speed tables, we have to use our discretionary funds.
Through the chair, one of the things that when we first started to do this and we came to the
Yeah.
table originally around the speed tables,
Right.
through the legislation with the bond funds and things like that,
Right.
was to look at the worst to first and really understand that these dollars needed to go to the streets that were having the issues. I could tell you, when we do our counts and look at various different wards, because we've met with most, not
Right.
all, but
Yeah.
a lot of the council folks, and there are some wards that are significantly worse than other wards, and it's just areas of the city, and that's just the reality. There's some that we've counted some wards trying to get 4 tables installed because there just wasn't the same issues or didn't meet that
Okay.
threshold.
Okay.
There are other wards, every street is almost on
So
the
then,
list.
what are you telling the viewing public? That bombard 311 with complaints
No,
on
there's
speeding? Is that the way you're going to get a speed table then in the city?
No, the speed table goes in based on our study and if it meets that threshold or criteria. So we have 122 identified locations through that process where the public can go onto the website, neighborhood traffic calming, I forget the last 4, but they could use a search engine, look up neighborhood traffic calming, and it's basically, you look at the map and you put a pin in where you have.
Well,
are
what about the
requesting.
people who do not go on, the large number of people who don't go on?
They can call 311. They
Okay,
can call
well,
our
that's what
office.
you're
Yeah.
saying. So you're telling the viewing public now, if you want a speed table, bombard 311 with a complaint,
So-
Through the chair, they have been.
okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's important for us to understand where some of these issues are. We don't know every street. So if we get the complaint, it generally gets counted within, or the study happens within 2 to 3 weeks. And we'll understand whether that meets the criteria or not.
But I think important clarification, if I could, though, is if someone dials 311 or goes online and makes a request, what they're requesting is a speed study. And the results of the speed study determine whether or not it meets the threshold. So I, for example, have had residents say, the speeding on our street is crazy, and the speed study has determined that there's maybe one person driving erratically, but the speeds and the volumes actually do not justify putting a speed table down, and they've said no. But I want to make it clear to people that I encourage them to reach out and do the speed study, but the speed study could affirm or it could disprove. Yeah.
Yes.
And through the chair, to date, we've done 150 analysis studies year to date in 2026. We also have an additional 10 units on order, so it can double our capacity. So again, we do encourage folks to reach out.
Okay. Okay, no, wait, okay, Councilman Jones, you had asked, go back.
Quickly, Mr. Chairman, because I know we want to get
Yes.
to the next piece of
Right.
legislation. I just, again, want to commend the people who are here, the director and the commissioner, for just being with the city the time that you've been here, as well as being thorough at your jobs that you are. And I'm appreciative of that. And I want to just, say that from just sitting in that session, you were thorough with that. And the question was earlier, and I didn't hear an affirmative, and maybe you said it, I don't know if I didn't hear it or something, but there's no way we can put speed bumps on Harvard, Lee Road, Kinsman, and Miles.
So Rob, I'll let you through the chair to the councilman. I won't say there's no way. I'll say under our current processes, we don't have the setup for it. There's a different design that needs to happen. There's partnerships with the state because these are state roads or federal roads, and so it's not as simple as what we can do on our own streets, our residential streets.
I see.
So I won't say it's impossible. There are things in the works right now. Commissioner said that we're looking at something on St. Clair, but again, that's because we're working with the state and we're working with a few other folks on the design of that speed table.
Okay, so now we done opened up Pandora's box now.
No, through the chair,
So
the
I'm
councilman.
just
what-
letting-
Through the chair, go ahead.
Just a
if you don't mind,
clarifying
if-
point, go ahead.
If you don't mind, what you're just saying right now, we're just opening up Pandora's box. Now I'm gonna get killed, and I know I'm gonna get killed on a Thursday night in my neighborhood meeting, where we have about 120 people on average come, and on a real good night we've got to turn people away because the capacity is too full. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. Right now, the city of Cleveland has not put any speed bumps on main roads. Part of that is due to some of these routes being state routes and getting state approval, but there's a potential, what sounds like, to be able to put something preliminary on St. Clair Avenue, and you're working through that process. Just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Through the chair of the councilman, that's correct. So under our current program, we would not put any of those speed tables on Lee, Miles, Harvard, any of those streets. What I am saying is that as part of this target speed project that's on St. Clair, they're being contemplated and they're being designed specifically for that type of roadway, which is a lot different than what we currently are doing with our neighborhood traffic calming.
I see. So then, Mr. Chairman, I would request that you look at, Lee Road, Harvard, Miles, and Kinsman. And it ain't gonna take you long to sit down at the corner of Lee and Harvard and see how bad it is. I've even asked, Mr. Chairman, to the safety director at times, we need to put just a car up there, just to have a police car sitting at the shopping plaza would scare the bejeebies out of people and they may slow down. Just having a fake car there. because the speed is going so fast up and down that strip. Just the other day, just driving down that street where we were having the elections yesterday, it was absolutely crazy. We were watching people in a school zone run the red light and go straight on past, zooming at speeds that looked like it was 60 or 70 miles an hour, straight through all the red lights, coming straight on down. And thank God school was in and it wasn't coming out. So those are the kinds of things that I'm dealing with, gentlemen. So if there is going to be a pilot program where we're going to look at that, I certainly want you to start taking the assessment now. And to all of those citizens, we have called, and we're appreciative that the administration has listened to the cries for assistance and help as it relates to trying to calm down the traffic that's just absolutely, unfortunately, out of hand.
Okay.
So that's an affirmative that you'll be able to do that?
So through the chair to the councilman, we definitely can look. I know that this happened through a grant, and this happened through years of study where St. Clair is probably one of the highest, if not the highest areas where there's actual fatal accidents. And so that's why this area was pinpointed. I won't say that I've been on Lee and I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay. So for me we can definitely look at it. I just don't know how soon it will materialize. So I want you, okay. I want everybody to understand that.
I want to make sure I put it on your radar.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let me read the amendment. There is no legal objection to this legislation if amended as follows. In Section 5, at the end, insert the Director of Public Works, as appropriate, shall provide written notice to the Clerk of Council whenever any purchase is made under this section, which notice shall include the details of any such cooperative purchases. And that was Assistant Director of Law. Okay, any other questions on this piece? This has to go to finance yet? It still has to go to, let me see, planning and sustainability, and it has to go to finance committee as well.
I don't know.
Yes?
Yeah, I just want to know, how do we add, if we wanted to add more money to this, how do we do that?
Yes.
Because part of the things is, I still haven't received, I don't know the status of any of the money I have this year, so.
Okay.
How do you
Director?
do, how we're gonna have to do, will it require additional legislation? What will we need it to just add money?
Using our discretion.
Yes.
No. You want to?
Whoever
For
can
for
answer.
clarification,
Open it up
Mr.
to
Chairman.
the chair.
Yeah, through the chair to the councilman.
For clarification, Mr. Chairman, it is using our discretionary funds.
Yes.
Through the chair to count, that is correct. And there's no legislation. We've just worked through Tony Tell to set all this up. So that's
So we would let our internal staff person know.
yes.
And what's the estimated cost of a speed table today?
Through the chair, we did get, we put out 2 requisitions just to get an idea of what a contract would look
Yes.
like. So we're still reviewing that, but it was lower than what we estimated. So we
Great.
estimated 8,000, so it was a little bit lower than that. But
Okay.
I thought it was
it's-
5,000.
that's through the Division of Streets.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how much is it here?
So through the
What's the
chair,
preliminary
everyone,
estimate, Mr.
please.
Chairman? Mr. Chairman, what's the preliminary estimate to
Through the-
Mr. Mavick?
Through the chair of the council member, it's lower than the 8. It's right around 75. We haven't gone through the entire review of it, so I don't want to disclose that.
Point well taken.
But they just came in yesterday. But
Okay.
those are ways that, and when we're doing that, we're trying to figure out how can we lower those costs through this
Excellent.
contract.
Okay.
So
So.
Thank you.
You've heard the concerns and the complaints. You're going to hear the same things at the next 2 committee meetings, so be prepared. And then again, you need to pin down those council members who you've not met with. I included, and because I have some concerns about what I'm seeing in
sure.
here. I have some real concerns. So without further ado, without objection, we'll move this piece on. Ordinance number 1406-2025 as amended is approved as read. Please sign it up, Councilman.
Thank you.
Okay, so get ready for the next committees, because you know it's coming.
Okay. Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Ordinance number 465-2026 by Council Members Polensek and Griffin by Department request an emergency ordinance to amend Section 405.04 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, as amended by ordinance number 08-2000, passed July 19, 2001, relating to storage fees and vehicle impounds. First time it was read was April 13, 2026, approved by Director of Public Safety, approved by Director of Finance. There is no legal objection. Director, and your team, introduce yourself and your team for the viewing public.
Good afternoon, Chair and the council members. To my left is Assistant Director Jason Shackner from the Department of Public Safety, and to my right, Sergeant Donegan from the Division of Police in the Impound Lot.
Okay, tell us about this piece.
Yes, sir. As you stated before, ordinance number 465-2026. This ordinance would amend section 405.04 as amended by ordinance number 2208-2000 relating to storage fees at the city vehicle pound. The amendment would increase the storage fee from $9 to $16 for the first 5 days or fraction thereof, and from $6 to $14 for each subsequent day or a fraction of the day. The existing exemption for vehicles held as property of a crime victim would be retained. Cleveland's current storage fee has not been updated in nearly 25 years and are the lowest among comparable Ohio cities. The proposed rates remain well below the maximum daily storage fee of $22 per day as authorized by the Ohio Administrative Code, Rule 4901 2-24-03, effective January 1st of this year. A brief comparison of peer cities is provided. I think you guys have that as well. For example, Cincinnati, their daily storage fee is $25 plus tax. Hamilton, it's $30. Toledo is $20. Columbus, $18, and here in the city of Cleveland, it's $9 and $6, and proposed again is $16 and $14. Even as the proposed new rates, if approved by council, still would remain the lowest among peer cities here in the state of Ohio.
Okay.
And just,
yes, Assistant Director.
Just to add in terms of the OAC section, the revised code 4921.25B4 accepts those maximums for cities in certain situations that are using it that have their own towage fees and storage fees. Those are for like towing vehicles under, what's it, 4921.60, I believe. Just to avoid just to head off any questions that,
Yes.
well, look at Cincinnati, so over $22. That's why there's an exception for cities that have that listed their own towage.
Okay. So, educate us. Who has the contract now?
That would be, to the chair, that would be TMT Consolidated, which is doing business as Cleveland Vehicle Detention Center.
And where is the lot located at? Whoever can answer that, thank you.
One more time. There you go.
Yes, sir. To the chair. The current location is 3040 Quigley Road.
Quigley Road. Okay, and vehicles that are stored down there are from what?
Any police tows for accidents, traffic violations, arrests, recovered stolen vehicles.
Okay, so vehicles that are involved in criminal activity go where?
Those go to Lot 2 if they're being held for evidence as
Okay.
property of the victim.
Okay. So, the fees have not been increased since 2000, 2001?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And let me see what else I'm looking at here. Okay. And you don't believe to the director and to the assistant director this will put an undue burden on individuals in the city who have their vehicles towed?
To the chair, we do not believe this would put a burden. It's significantly lower than surrounding areas. In addition, these prices were reasonable in 2001. The ones the $9 a day
Yes.
and $6 for each additional day.
Yes.
So we do believe that this would not be
Through-
too much of a
Yeah,
burden.
and that's correct. And I echo through the chair, echo Assistant Director's, Assistant Director Shackner's sentiments. We evaluated this. We take all of this in consideration. We're very sensitive
Okay.
to our community, and when we take these things under consideration, we talk obviously with the Division of Police. We vet it with our office and so forth, check with our peer cities, and make sure, again, that when we do things, we're deliberate in our thoughts and so
Yes.
forth, taking all that in consideration in our
Okay.
community, so wouldn't adversely affect our community.
Okay.
We don't believe
What-
that this will.
What is the split on the daily charge between the city and the operator?
To the chair, the fees allotted to the city are $30 per day. That's assessed by a separate impound fee. The fees that are collected for the storage go directly to the storage lot.
So this increase would go directly would go directly to them?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
that is how they are paid. We do not pay the contractor, CVDC, any money out of our general fund. They recover their money for their operations through the fees directly.
So the money that is paid, that pays for their operation of their lot, staffing their lot, and securing their lot.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Have we had any issues with security, with vehicles being damaged or taken?
There have been a few complaints over the year. These are always addressed by the personnel at the impound lot. And there is a system in place where they respond to citizens' complaints of damage or missing
Yes.
property within 5 working days.
Okay. Do we have any police officers assigned out there?
Police officers are assigned at the front of the lot, but
Okay.
the independent contractor provides for their own security.
Okay. Walk us through, someone gets their car stolen and it's towed to this lot. Explain that process.
To the chair, a recovered stolen vehicle is transported from the location where it's recovered by
Yes.
a city contracted tow company. They have to arrive within 30 minutes to the impound lot. There it's allotted 30 minutes to be processed, where it is gone over, it is the registration, the VIN number
Yes.
is checked. Also, photographs are taken of the condition of the vehicle and any damage as it's being brought in. So all of that is logged, cataloged. Then it is assigned a slot, a particular parking space, and the contracted tow company then moves it there to its assigned parking space. The intake personnel of the Cleveland Vehicle Detention Center completes their paperwork, and then that information is entered into their computer system. A hard copy file is completed and kept until the vehicle is released.
And what is the charge to the owner of the vehicle?
It depends on why the vehicle was towed and how long it remains at the impound lot.
Okay, so I get my car stolen. It goes to the impound lot. What's the daily charge?
The initial fee is $50 right now for the towing, a $10 impound fee, and then storage as calculated currently, $9 plus tax for each of the first 5 days, and then $6 plus tax on day 6 through whenever it's picked up.
Okay. So there's no discount or anything for a person who gets their car stolen?
To the
Nothing.
chair, the discount is given on the initial impound fee and the towing fee.
Okay. And what is that?
Instead of a vehicle being towed for parking,
Right.
the difference is $125 for parking, $50 for a recovered stolen vehicle.
Okay.
The city's cut of a parking violation is a $30 impound fee. For a recovered stolen, it's a $10 impound fee.
Okay. Thank you. Questions of the committee? Councilman Jones.
Mr. Chairman, the legislation that we have, just for clarification, is only to deal with, so I'm on the same page, is only to deal with storage fees.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, is there any other legislation that's going to come before the council to deal with all of the other parts and particulars and pieces as it relates to fee increases for
Towing?
towing and the likes?
Director?
So, for an example, you know, any kind of accidents, AWD, stolen vehicles, arrest, all of that, that's a part of this entire proposition of the charges that are created. Are we looking at increasing the other areas as well? Mr. Chairman, to the Director.
Through the chair, yes. That initial draft has been completed of those after various meetings with the tow companies and the division. And law has to put it into, it takes time for law to put it into a form that is then ready for introduction.
I see. And so, Mr. Chairman, to the Director, the fee that we have right now currently in place, I guess the question I would ask is if I could have a little bit of understanding on why it's set at that price. Is it because it's not the market price? It's a set we set. So if we went by market rate, what would that price actually be?
Through the chair to Councilman Jones, we have obviously the prices were set before. Obviously, I'm not quite sure when they were set. I know as far as the fees were concerned, they were 25 years ago before we changed it. So back about 2000, 2001 is when those fees were put in place. And that's why it's a request not to increase those. The actual fees separate from this ordinance that Assistant Director Shackner talked about is going through the law department right now with the recommendation, working with Division of Police, working with the tow companies to increase those fees. The fees right now currently, and it depends what you're talking about. For example, we talked about stolen is $50 right now. Adjusted to increase of wages is
No, Mr. Chairman.
What?
So let me just be respectful because if I say something bad to this gentleman right here, my people gonna get on me because they like him so much. And so I want my people to understand I didn't ask that question, and the distinguished gentleman be giving me a whole lot more information than what I've asked for.
And what's the question?
So the issue is the fee that we have set right now that's before the council.
In this
Is
particular
that,
legislation.
that's correct. Is this a market rate fee? And why isn't it not a market rate fee? And what's the thinking behind that so I can understand that?
Through the chair to Councilman Jones. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the clarification. Misinterpreted your question. I thought you were talking about for tows and so forth. You're talking about the piece in front
we
of
got
us.
distinguished because those pieces are going to be handled in another piece.
That is
the
correct.
director just
You're
talked about.
talking about it says still below market rate. When you look at the fees that are currently being charged by the other municipalities, Cincinnati, Toledo, Columbus, you'll see that their fees are even higher.
Yeah,
So
and I want to know what the thinking is why we have our fee set at this rate.
Through the chair, to the councilman, this fee was settled at with conversations with the contractor that is currently operating of what they would find to be reasonable. And also, we want to maintain that a good deal for our residents in the city of Cleveland that do happen to get their cars towed and stored for a period of time. The operators of the tow lot expressed that this would be a fee that would be more than reasonable and allow them to continue their work and pay their employees. And as you can see, Public Utilities Commission of Ohio is the one that sets the maximum for private towers and for private storage units, and they have a maximum of $22. So, and you could extrapolate from that maximum that PUCO put together that was based on what their staff research markets and the states, nearby states and things like that, of how they put a cap of $22, you could kind of extrapolate what would be reasonable within between $0 and $22 as a reasonable.
And you said this was PUCO, Mr. Chairman, that's established those rates?
PUCO, yes, for private towers and private storage.
And then, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next question I would have is, would be projecting, and it's as you negotiate. And I don't have any unreadiness on the 16th, so I don't have any more questions here. Because, no, I do have questions, but I don't have any more questions on this here piece, but just I'm projecting now. So as you work on the other parts and pieces of the other legislation that has to be coming before you, here's one of my major issues, beefs, and concerns.
Okay, to the point.
And this is going to be to the point,
Okay.
because this is critical, because it's happening all throughout my neighborhood.
Okay.
We have, Mr. Chairman, to our safety director, we have our firefighters that come out to these sites at times, and they're not cleaning up the debris and the mess. And
Coming after,
ho-
I'm sorry, to the
ho-
chair. To,
Let me finish, please, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman,
sure.
to our safety director. They're not cleaning up the debris. And it is a major issue for me, because right now, I have to personally go around and notify the city where these issues are, and then beg to have them cleaned up. Well, I don't beg, but I ask for them to be cleaned up, and we have a good commissioner and directors that do that. But when we have accidents in our city, in our communities, I've seen them do that downtown, but I haven't seen that happen in our neighborhood. When there's an accident, I've actually watched the fire department clean up the debris. And so in this particular instance, when the fire truck doesn't come, we should have, and it's my understanding that other cities have this practice, where those tow people clean the debris up in those streets. So I would ask, Mr. Chairman, that you put this, when you're negotiating and you're having this, there's two things that's important. The fire department, if they're cleaning up debris in downtown accidents and making sure it looks all nice and spiffy here, then they should be doing that same policy in neighborhoods. And then the second piece, Mr. Chairman, while you negotiating with the tow people, is to make sure that they are doing the same. Because if they're in other cities cleaning up the debris and the mess, they should be doing the same thing here. And I would request, Mr. Chairman, that be a part of the contract, and that those fees be market rate, so that it encourages them to go and clean that debris and mess up, because I can't continue to tell you how bad it is on those major roads you heard me talk about earlier.
through the chair to Councilman Jones, Assistant Director Schechner is going to answer that, but I also want to make sure it is part of the requirements now for the tow companies that they clean up after an accident. The fire division, you mentioned the fire division. The division of fire, if those firefighters are cleaning up because they're trying to help out, but it's not part of their responsibilities or duties or anything like that.
We
but
would
they're
ask
helping
that
out.
that be, Mr. Chairman, to the safety director,
and we
because
can-
it helps us keep our city clean.
Well, I certainly understand, but if it's an accident, to your point, when the tow companies come there, if there's a requirement for a tow company to come there, part of the requirements are for them to clean up. And we also have it in ordinance, and they can be fined as well. As now, if there's an accident where a vehicle isn't towed and so forth, and the fire division respond there, again, it's not required for them to do it. They're just doing it because they're good public servants to clean up the area as best as they can.
And through the chair to the councilman, that conversation did come up with our meeting with the towers, and they acknowledged that that is their responsibility as part of the contract. What we are, as a preview to how we're addressing it further in the proposed ordinance, proposed amendments to the ordinance, is to allow for, in situations where, because that could take a lot of additional time, and before it didn't qualify for extra payment. And so the city, we recognize that it might be more difficult to clean up certain sites than others, and they should be compensated fairly for that extra cleanup when it's required. So that is addressed in the proposed ordinance. So it'll be more likely that these tow companies that are part of our contracted companies will, as required, complete the cleanup when they are called to a scene.
And Mr. Chairman, just, in closing, I want to thank our safety director and the commissioners and the police officer sergeant who's here today. Thank you for the work that you do. But want to make sure that we send the strong message, or if, that's a part of what's going to be in the contract. I'm absolutely in agreement with that. And then also, if I guess the issue is, can we work to make sure that when we have our fire department at these scene locations, that they also clean up? Because I actually saw them clean up a site down here in downtown.
Through the chair, I would have to look at their orders. They have orders and so forth. That may be part of their orders. I don't want to speak out of turn here. They may have orders already that they assist in cleaning up the scenes. But definitely the tow truck companies are required per contract, and plus we have ordinance on the books as well.
So you've heard the concerns. And I think all of us would concur with Councilman Jones that we have this problem all over our neighborhoods with auto parts laying all over the streets and are not being cleaned up. So the suggestion is to the viewing public and to those of the council, when we run into that situation, who should we turn it into?
Wait.
To the chair, that complaint, that concern about
The tow we're not
debris
cleaning up.
left, that should be made to the vehicle impound unit.
Okay,
me.
You're gonna send that information, all 15 members, with a memo saying if there's a tow accident and it was a necessity of city tow and the debris has not been cleaned up, this is who you put the complaint to.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all 15 members.
Through the chair, we'll take care of it.
Councilwoman Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to kind of point something out. Several years ago, firefighter Johnny Tetrick was cleaning up debris when he was hit and killed on I-90 east of downtown. I know that it is important to clean up the debris, but I also just want to point out that it should not be the responsibility of our firefighters to, physically bend over and pick up that debris. It can be dangerous. I've had a conversation with, in the Office of Risk Management, Commissioner Romero, about some ideas he has about, how to address safety concerns with debris on highways after crashes, because it is not a good situation for our firefighters or EMS or police to be picking up debris on major highways. And because that is, he was struck and killed while he was picking up debris.
To the chair, the council member Hudson, I would certainly remember the situation, and we are working with risk management to make sure that all of our public safety personnel and first responders are safe. So I certainly understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, I believe that Commissioner Romero mentioned some sort of a device or something, kind of like a street sweeper or something that would come through after the scene of a crash, just to make sure that everything is picked up, all of the glass and metal, so that no one on our safety forces have to, bend over and pick things up.
And
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, I think Councilwoman Nikki Hudson has a point. I didn't know that, so I appreciate the fact that she brought that to our attention in terms of safety for our safety forces. So I guess the suggestion would be, as she suggested, how do we put together a program where when these accidents happen, we can forward that over to our cleanup crew in the city of Cleveland to get there and clean that up? Because there's been several incidences, and I can speak for myself for sure, where my car has hit debris and it has smacked my windshield and broke it, cracked it. So, and this is just stuff being on the road. So if we can have a crew go out there and clean it up, that's going to be really important to our citizens, because now I can understand if this was a situation where it's a one-off every now and then. But unfortunately, as you heard the testimony earlier today, people are driving up and down the streets of the city of Cleveland like they've lost their mind. And they're driving at speeds that like they've lost their mind. And so it is a situation where we're having a lot of these sites. And anybody that's sitting here and anyone who's viewing this, all you got to do is go up down Lee Road in Harvard, and you'll see all the debris, all of the accident sites that are happening, and no one's out there actually fundamentally cleaning it up. Not a tow truck, not a fire department, and not even some of our city people, until I have to get on the phone and call them and tell them, please, can you come clean up the site? So I guess the question, Mr. Chairman, now you can answer all you want, Director. How do we put together the program to make this happen?
Briefly,
Through the chair, absolutely,
Yeah.
to Councilman Jones. I stated before, if there was an accident and there was the tow trucks responded, we have a system in place. They actually make the complaint to the Division of Police, the impound unit in particular, to make sure that happens. But if it's still left there, I'm not quite sure the policy, if they go back out and clean it up. Not sure, I don't want to speak out of turn as well. Also, we do have the Public Works who will come out and clean up certain areas as well. On the highways, that's generally done by the state. They will come
But
out
just
and,
for the cities, 'cause I ain't on the highway.
Right.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't have the highway. What I need to have is someone. If your folks, if something happens, then the department is notified, and we got a specific crew that can go out there and clean that up because the tow trucks are not doing it.
through the
Fire
chair.
people are not doing it. No
I
one's
know
doing
what
it.
you're- Through the chair to Councilman, again, we do have a system in place relative for debris not being picked up. That's a complaint that's made through the Division of Police, the impound unit. Also, the Public Works will come out and clean up. I can't tell you if they have a specific crew. I don't know.
Is
but
it connected with you guys?
They're
So
not connected with
you
us.
So that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that when those accidents happen, Mr. Chairman, to the director, that there's a connectivity between, the incident and the appropriate department to clean the debris.
you've heard the concerns, you've heard the issues. Let's figure out, I'll let you guys figure it out, get us an email to all of us who we turn this stuff into, so we can get these debris fields taken care of.
They let you run.
Okay, what I have, without objection, ordinance number 465-2026 is approved as read. Please sign it up. Thank you for all. It's been a long
Thank you.
day so far, and it's not over yet, okay? Thank you. Committee stands adjourned.